Happy Sunday, Smite fans, and welcome back to the final day of the regular season of the Road to Worlds phase here in the SPL. I'm J-Mac. I got Trelly joining me here as we get to kick off our final day of regular season play. A very important matchup to be able to start out our weekend, or start out a day to kind of round out this phase as well, because we do still have standings implications in our matchup today, and most specifically in our first matchup. Jade Dragons and Eldritch Hounds kick off our Sunday. Oni Warriors and Gilded Gladiators will be our final match of the phase. If you missed out yesterday, Styx Ferryman 3-0 over the Jade Dragons. Oni Warriors 3-1 over the Camelot Kings. If you didn't manage to catch the recap that was on just a few moments ago, there's your immediate kind of 2-second recap for you. But as mentioned, we are now starting in with the Jade Dragons and the Eldritch Hounds. And why is this matchup so important? Well, the Eldritch Hounds are only one set from tying the, what would be 3-7 at Jade Dragons. If that ends up being a loss, you're saying, okay, well, maybe there's a tiebreaker then. There won't be a tiebreaker. Eldritch Hounds won their first matchup against the Jade Dragons, so a win here for the Hounds would mean they have a better head-to-head record against the Dragons and would then overtake third seed. So for the Dragons, this is a must-win for them if they want to keep third seed. For the Hounds, this is a must-win if they want to take third seed away and go for that final playoff spot. And I think that's the important, and the gravity of now this match is this is no longer, oh, I just need to must win this so I can hold on to this seed. This is now a whoever wins this match goes to playoffs. We see them again in a couple of weeks trying to play for that first opportunity to go to the SMITE World Championships. Loser of this match, we're not going to see them again until January. It'll be all the way until 2024 before we see this team again in a last chance qualifier for Worlds.
And that's the other thing, is you're going to get a lot of better practice up against these top SPL teams as opposed to, fighting through some of those SEC squads later on. So it's going to be a big deal. Luckily, we got to talk to some of these players. I remember we got to talk to NeilMah specifically during waiting room, and he was like, listen, man, we're down for anything. We want to win this matchup, of course. We're going to bring our all, but it's also the same situation where playing through the qualifier sometimes give you that edge. It gets you cooking right before Worlds, gets you some momentum on your side. So it could go either way at this point.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the overarching question that we always talk to teams about. So, would you rather get that early qualifier to Worlds, have a little bit of time, not necessarily like time off, but have a little bit of time away from some of the competitive, kind of sit back and watch everything that's going on? Or would you rather be that team that's kind of maybe stressing a little bit, going, oh man, I've only got one more chance, and that's like a couple of months away, so you have a lot of extra time to sit there and try and figure out what were the SEC teams doing, maybe scrim against some of those guys and try and get into that world championship spot. And who better than NeilMah, as you mentioned, that we got a chance to sit down earlier in this week and talk to, and we got to get his thoughts on this matchup against the Dragons.
Our team, I felt, is pretty up and down. We've been just trying to find a bit of direction, and I think this week we played well, though. Just kind of trying to find a bit more of an identity and something that works for us. We just kind of feels like drafting. We've been losing a lot in drafts. We're just picking stuff just because they're good characters. We're not picking things that go together. So I think this week was just good to kind of build a foundation for let's get some combos we like. Let's try and pick a style we like, and then we're going to have a better chance at winning just because we have actual win conditions. So we're getting a lot more cohesion in the draft, and I think this week it showed a lot. The Dragons have been just really up and down. I mean, they look great at times. They look like they should be winning some of these games blowout, and then you look away from your screen for 2 seconds, look back, and they lost somehow. So I think that they've just been struggling a bit closing out games and just finding a bit of consistency in that way. But I think they've been doing a lot better towards the end of the phase. So they're always a tough team to beat. But the one thing about them is they're always kind of prone to beating themselves at the same time. We're feeling really good. I mean, I think it's just going to be them playing a bit of wacky stuff. I saw they're playing Suki Afro, things like that. So I think it's going to be probably 2 different types of metas, 2 different types of things we're looking for. I think it's going to be really competitive, and I'm hoping it'll go to 5 at least, so then we can everyone there can get some good practice leading into play-ins, and hope we can have a little bit of fun too, because I don't think it really matters too much for standings. I could be mistaken, but like I said, I just hope that we're just playing our best next weekend, and anything from there is going to be a bonus.
Well, little did Neil know, it actually matters a lot for standings now. This is no longer going into week 6, it was a case of the Dragons where they just needed to win one of the 3 remaining sets that they had in order to guarantee their third seed at the very least, potentially jump up a little bit higher. But now it is a must-win for both of these teams if they want to make it to that playoffs bracket in just a couple of weeks. And I think, and it's something that Neil didn't mention, but just kind of popped back into my head, this is now a kind of a match of VaporishCoast versus his old team, the team that he had left to now join over. First time that we're seeing him And when you think about it, Coast was actually on the Hounds when they beat the Dragons last time, and then Coast went over to the Dragons, so we'll see if that swap over for him gives the Dragons that extra little bit of improvement, maybe that gives them that extra little bit of edge to go against the Eldritch Hounds.
I don't know. He's got a devilish smile on his face, too.
He's
Like he knew exactly what he was doing coming over to this squad. But I think Coast has been a pretty big pace changer here for the Jade Dragons. You know, I think this was something that, you know, a lot of teams, when discussing their play style, the Dragons that is, it does go into pace. You know, they like to play a little bit slower, or I guess maybe they don't like to play a little bit slower, but they ended up playing a little bit slower, which wasn't really fitting their MO. They couldn't siege very well. They would get early leads, but not be able to translate that into an actual Titan call or an actual Fire Giant, things like that. So I think adding Coast, we have seen shimmers of that being fixed. Not completely ironed out, obviously, if they're still fighting for third or fourth place, which is not where you want to be, but at this point you don't have a choice. And a lot of that has come from the duo lane. A lot of that has come from the addition of Coast, and of course the aggression that Mike has already had. Anyone who's seen the SMITE Pro League for a couple of years now knows that PolarBearMike is one of the more aggressive players in the league at times when the meta fits it. And, you know, sometimes he'll dial back, go to things like the Aphrodite, but there's also times where he'll just run away with the game with Baron support and just want to play as aggressive as possible.
I mean, Mike was one of the biggest proponents of the old school invade meta. You know, when you think a few seasons back, and why a thing like Invader's Curse even existed at this point, it's because Mike was one of the forerunners.
It was just
of that.
Mike.
There's Mike and a few others, but Mike was definitely like the one that stood out amongst almost anybody else. I mean, the Hercules supports, the Serqet supports that he used to kind of play back in those times, maybe not necessarily entirely viable nowadays, but that's the level of aggression from Mike that, not necessarily that I miss, but that we haven't quite seen to that same degree. We've seen shimmers of it over the course of the last seasons. I think last year when Scream jumped onto the Jade Dragons roster, we really got to see some of that come back out from him. And now with Coach jumping to this team, we're starting to see a little bit more of that. We're still not seeing quite that same level of peak just yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of old Mike kind of pop back in here, and it's starting to bleed around to the remaining portions of this team.
And that's going to be interesting. I wonder what version of the Jade Dragons we're going to be getting today, because again, there's a lot on the line. We've talked about the standings quite extensively, and you don't, I imagine you don't want to go through, you know, the last chance qualifier if you can help it, right? And just to be clear, going to playoffs does not guarantee you that spot either, right? It's not like, you know, you just want to get to that point, right? You want to get over that hump. So if that's the case, I'm looking at a lot of stone cold grins there from the Jade Dragons. The only smile I saw was Coast when we immediately went over. So possibly feeling some nerves going into a matchup like this, as you already highlighted. The Hounds already beat them once. Different roster for both squads at this point, so a lot of weight being on the line here. Whether or not the junglers are going to have a big impact is also a big topic of conversation. Oathhh and LASBRA, they hold a lot of weight of the early game, which can pretty much decide a game if you're playing the way that the Eldritch Hounds and the Jade Dragons have been lately. So I expect a lot of bans, or at least contention towards some of those jungle picks.
We saw the Ferryman doing that yesterday against the Jade Dragons, ban away LASBRA. We'll see if the Eldritch Hounds repeat that here in game number 1 between the Hounds and the Dragons. You do see the Ratatoskr. That has been one of LASBRA's go-to gods in a jungle, one of his big impact gods for quite some time now, and has just been an impact jungler across the board for a lot of different teams. So seeing that one gone, no surprise. Umoja going to be added to the ranks for the Hounds, and the Jade Dragons, I think maybe learning a bit from their set yesterday. Athena's not fun to play against. Ban that one away since you are not in that first pick slot, because while maybe Aurora isn't going to go for a necessary first pick on the Athena, Neil's comfortable on this pick, and he has no hesitation snap blocking that one in if left open. So we'll see that and the Olorun banned away by the Dragons. Olorun being one of Stu's favorite gods to go to during this mage hunter style of meta. Opposite in Chernobog for the Eldritch Hounds, with one ban left now for the Jade Dragons. Still quite a bit open, though. The top 3 gods have been taken off of the table. Amaterasu will be the next one up if the Dragons want to go ahead and ban that one away. But still plenty of mages to go into the solo lane, leaving a couple of them open. Morgan Le Fay, Raijin, both still open if you want to go there. Raijin will be the pick for the Hounds.
Yep, Raijin's going to be the call. Eldritch Hounds love This Raijin pick, whether it goes over to BennyQ or Ducky, more often than not, has been going over towards Ducky, but always has the ability to flex just because that's the mage meta we're in. Sometimes your mid lane and your solo are just taking picks from each other. But with that, the Amaterasu, it's left open as well. One of the few warriors still getting picked over in that solo lane. Add an Anhur into the mix. And you've got a pretty aggressive top 2 there for the Jade Dragons. One that they didn't have to think too much about either. That was essentially 2 insta-locks there for the Jade Dragons. I wonder if the Hounds are going to prioritize getting duo lane pressure right now, or if they're just going to immediately give up on that and say, you know what, Anhur, a little bit too scary to try and fight in too early on. We're just going to, succeed that pressure and look for late game hard carry potential here from Stu. That is the playstyle he likes to go towards anyways. Not often are we seeing Stu try to match, the aggression of an Anhur early on. He's more so just going to sit back. So maybe you just leave that pick until after the second wave of bans. But if you do, you're probably prioritizing Neil's pick at least, right? You're not going to, I don't think you hold your whole duo lane for the last pick. It's more so you're looking at junglers, right? Counter picks. Something that Oathhh and LASBRA both like to do is save that pick towards a little bit later. So maybe we see a support pickup here, at least before the second wave of bans.
Maybe also no surprise that the Anhur is that snap block, that it's Coast #1 played God at the moment here in this phase. It accounts for over a third of his games actually played over the course of this phase. So seeing that one prioritized by the Dragons makes a lot of sense. Does go to Soul, though, in the opposite for Stu, which has kind of jumped her way up. When we got to the beginning of the phase, we saw pretty much 2 consistent mage ADCs. It was Ola Freya. If they're not picked, if they're not banned, then you go to the next hunter up. Didn't see a whole lot of Soul, and I think it was Panda Cat kind of brought Soul back onto the scene between him, Yarkor, really showed what this god is capable of. So we will see the Soul and Charon join the scene for the Eldritch Hounds. Another god that's kind of been on the rise. Ever since his release, we've been seeing kind of glimpses of Charon, a couple of players here and there, sometimes solo, sometimes support. He has been more missed than hit, but we have been seeing more hits recently than we did on his initial release.
22 games played, 27% win rate. A
lot
lot more misses than hits, but maybe that's just trying to figure out how the Charon works. He's still relatively new. They're trying to figure out that spice. I have to see. That ends up being a worthwhile pick there for the Eldritch Hounds, but the Camazotz swoops in to the Jade Dragons top 3. Not a bad look. The Camazotz has been very highly contested, whether that be in the jungle. Plenty of damage, plenty of safety. You don't want to deal with big burst mages. Just go up in the air, just swoop around. That's exactly what Camazotz can do up against things like Supernova from Soul, and of course things like Taiko Drums. But that will mean that Oathhh gets to see his matchup, right? We were talking about junglers holding their picks until a little bit later. Assuming that Camazotz does go in the jungle, you already know what you're facing, or at the very least you know what to deal with. Wonder what Oathhh goes to in the meantime. Still has liked his hard carries. That is where Oathhh has succeeded in the past. There's going to be some bans heading his way as well, or not. Just the Hercules and the Ullr. So Oathhh does have his pick of the litter. The Susano still available. The Lancelot he's liked as well. We saw Fafnir once. Looked alright. So maybe something he could go towards as well. But probably saves his pick towards a little bit later.
You see Aphrodite Fafnir banned by the Eldritch Hounds. Brings Sylvanus to the limelight now for the Jade Dragons. Only been played a couple times this phase. One win, one loss. Jade Dragons, they banned away Ullr and Hercules. Herc has been a go-to for Ducky. If he's not going to the mages and if it's not banned away, has been one of his favorite gods. But I wonder if we will be seeing this Raijin go over to solo lane instead. I mean, you have a magical ADC. If you throw a magical mid, you need some extra physical damage in there. You can get it from your jungler here with the Erlang Shen if that does get locked in for Oathhh. Gives you that extra bit of initiation that maybe Charon lacks a little bit in the middle of a team fight. But then still waiting to see if this Raijin is going to BennyQ or if this Raijin is going to Ducky. And if that's the case, if this Raijin does go to Ducky, what goes in mid? We've seen a couple of Hunter mids. Actually, we've seen quite a few Hunter mid over the time, but I believe Venenu, the only one who has brought the Ishtar to the mid lane in games of past. Would keep things interesting, and we will see the Erlang Ishtar final lock-in for the Hounds.
Yeah, I mean, Stu has like the Ishtar, but if that's the case, we haven't seen Sol in the mid lane in quite some time. I mean, she always has the ability to be played there, but more often than not does go over towards duo. For my money, you probably send the Ishtar towards mid with BennyQ, but does not seem to matter. Hera, last lock in there for the Jade Dragons. Surprise to no one. You know, it's a pick that always is available if you're Dardez. No one else really looking towards her too often. But Dardez always has a Hera in the back pocket. I'm thinking about the team fight presence here from the Jade Dragons. You're going to want that Sylvanus ult to be connecting on just about everyone. You know, whether or not Mike can afford to go blink is a question, because you need to hit the pull otherwise, but Wrath of Terra can be some tremendous engage. And think about the CC you're chaining. If you have Wrath of Terra into Argus, into a Polymorph, you don't get to play the game for a solid 8 seconds by the time that's done. So it could be very annoying to try and deal with if your beads are down and if the Jade Dragons are on point with their CC. On the other side, Charon does provide a bit of engage, but you're relying pretty heavily on 9 turns blessing here from Erlang Shen. The River of Styx, I've seen more misses than hits, if I'm honest. Like that wave, just because it has global presence, does not mean you need to send it out across the map. It is very slow traveling still.
Yeah, it's always a treat getting to watch from the overhead perspective. You just see a random wave creeping through the jungle. By the time it gets to its destination, the players have already like gone back to base, so they're watching the wave come by.
They've seen it come from halfway across the map.
Someone gets a call like, "Hey, by the way, Zap, you might have like a wave coming your way," and he just like looks over, he's like, "I don't see it yet." So, give it time. Don't worry about that. But kind of looking at the Eldritch Hounds, you mentioned maybe some of the tougher initiation now because of the Charon, the Erlang Shen. Do you think that now by putting this Raijin over in Ducky's hand, that maybe not necessarily helps the initiation, but gives the Hounds a little bit of that extra dive they might be lacking?
I think it does help the dive as well as a bit of the initiation. Oftentimes, Taiko Drums is used just in the middle of a team fight, but if you catch someone out without beads, you could just fear them back into your squad. You can taunt them. You know, you can use that ultimate for CC specifically if you need it. And because I'm looking at the Hounds composition, I think they may need a little bit more of that CC. Erlang Shen is not going to provide all the initiation you need. It'll start the fight off, but you're going to need a little bit more. So I think sending the Raijin over to Ducky's hands, definitely the right call.
One of the struggles that we've seen kind of out of both these teams has been how they transition towards the late game. Hounds usually have a little bit of a rougher early, but can scale a little bit better towards late game. Jade Dragons, at least as of their recent set, have been really good at the early game. Get those early kills, but have been having a hard time really translating that into anything more than just the kills to that point. So for the Jade Dragons, look at this composition, trying to scale their way to get towards these team fights, get to the objectives. You have the Amaterasu, you have Anhur, you've got great damage around there. But now we need to see maybe some of those objectives started up and now worked on by the Jade Dragons, because they need to find success in this set. Both these teams need to find a win today if they want to go to the playoffs. But it all starts right here in game number 1. The Hounds, the Dragons. We'll throw it over to our casters, Gore and Inbound.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Charlie. That's right, it's Gore, it's Inbound. Of course, it's going to be Doug giving us the view into the battleground. And this, Inbound, a very, very important set. Right now, last time these two teams played, Hounds able to beat the Dragons, so if they win today, they get the head-to-head. We can ignore plus-minus. They have done everything they need to get there.
Cross the T's, dot the I's.
Dragons win. They just have a better win-loss in their set record. And right now, chat, at least for this game, is leaning towards the Dragons. And I'm kind of inclined to ask if you agree. I know we were talking about, we got to see the Camazotz. Not often Sylvanus comes out, but then everything else on the Dragons lineup feels like a signature pick.
Yeah, I mean, the Coast Anhurs looked fantastic. We saw it even yesterday. The problem is, this Anhur gets a lead, and the Dragons don't really play through it. They don't really pressure those purple buffs. So if they do get that lead in duo, especially with such a strong 2v2, healing, sustain, clear, damage, prot shred on both of them, they have a lot of kill potential over here, so they need to play through this. Slightly different start, something you can kind of do with Sylvanus, because it's got such good clear, even if Anhur does not. Group this up, hit level 3, same on the other side of the map. Both allowed to do that because of just the clear potential of both duos. Both going to be hitting level 2 going into lane. And it's going to be a pretty exciting 2v2 because there is a lot of kill potential.
There's a lot between these two teams that could really try and change things up. Coast is always just a treat to watch. Stu, it's weird because I don't see Stu being a boxing carry. Coast doesn't care who he's playing against. He's going to jump in on him and look for the fight. And he could be 2 levels down. Yesterday, Though we did see, and I think Aurora had mentioned it in the interview, but a weird pace from the Dragons. They got ahead. LASBRA came over pretty early and had something kind of like that happen, although not quite the kill for Coast. The pressure is there. And that's really what it was, right? Is you get a little bit of that pressure. They got a 2 kills, massive lead for Coast. And then also never came back to the lane. It feels like Coast was like, cool, I'm ahead. He's at every purple buff. He was at every bat camp. He was looking for experience in fights, and it just didn't play through him at all. Do you think that that's something... I mean, I honestly like watching when Coast can, and I think we've gone on record saying that's a lane that's consistent, which is something they didn't have before, but do you want to see them play through duo on either side of this?
Yeah, 100%. I think when you get Anhur in general, no matter if it's Coast or whoever it is, you should be playing through this duo, because Anhur is not a late-game carry. You're not playing this god to go to 20. You're playing this god to snowball the lane. So if you're picking the Anhur, and we've seen it time and time again, Coast on this Anhur, he is very clean. He will hit those impales. The walls will be fantastic, and he'll pick up those kills. But as you were saying yesterday, Anhur got a lead, and they didn't play for purples.
Yeah.
They played for maybe shields, and that was it.
We'll say, Coast played for purples. Nobody came with him.
It was a 1v2 at purple with Coast versus 2. Yeah, so he played through them, but we need to see Laz making those rotations.
Yeah.
Mike needs to be playing to that side of the map. I mean, you have an Amma on the other side of the map. Just let her farm.
Something could be pretty simple. It is always interesting watching, though, and this could be a much bigger deal. Never mind, quite easy for LASBRA. He's not level 5 yet, but still, Camazotz. Oathhh has just been incredibly deep in the jungle, and I thought was going to look for a little bit more. If he hits level 5 first, which at this rate, it can happen, but also he's not getting a whole lot of experience. It maybe leads into that taunt. You've got Raijin on one side. You had just mentioned, with Amma, if you're a LASBRA, just let her farm. She's going to do fine. Do you want Oathhh to play through right? Do you want him to try and match LASBRA, maybe put some of the pressure on left to balance out and maybe shut down the Anhur? Where's the best place for Oathhh to try and get his hands on?
Everywhere. When you're playing Erlang, you have to make plays, because you're not farming on this Erlang. It's the same thing with that Anhur. You're not playing Erlang to farm. You're playing him to pull relics, to then initiate fights. And really, when it comes to the late game, Erlang's just an engage character. He doesn't really do all too much damage. He does a little bit, obviously. He is a jungler, will build power. But he's not a hyper carry jungler. So we need to see Oathhh when he hits that level 5. He's getting beat to level 5 by Laz, actually, because Laz is clearing out all of his jungle first. And Oathhh got that invade to play for kind of giving Ducky this solo lane advantage, because you get you get Raijin a small lead, and it's a pretty fair advantage. You're pretty safe most of the time. Pull almost hits. No beads were available there either by Stu. They times it just barely enough time by Stu to stay in that incorporeal form. But we need Oathhh to get involved everywhere. That is the entire point of this Erlang pick. When you see players like Panatom play it, you see anyone else play this Erlang, they're blinking as soon as it's up.
This matchup does kind of just feel like we're going to talk a lot about probably Dardez, Coast, Nika will get in there, Ducky, BennyQ, Stu. I do feel like it's going to be the pressure from Oathhh. There was a great attempt in mid, but Dardez, those beads get maybe the most value of beads I've ever gotten. 2 ults, and narrowly avoids a first blood again. But that's more or less kind of what I'm latching onto here, which it feels like these two teams have a lot going for them. But at the same time, if you watch Oathhh, you watch LASBRA, those have been, I don't want to say inherent win conditions, but they have dictated whether or not the team is playing appropriately, is the way I would describe it. And as of now, the Hounds have just been doing better farm-wise. 1,500 gold just kind of manifested out of the thin air. And that's no first blood, no huge objectives, just neutral camps, and maybe some small invades. It gives you a really cozy little lead.
Yeah, 4-0 on totems.
Oh, wow.
That's that pressure of Raijin getting that bunch of totems, blue buff down on Amma. Maybe you want to play for this next blue buff if you're LASBRA, just to secure it. But, I mean, this is a slow-paced game, and if you think about how both teams scale, yes, they're scaling on each sides. Double auto attack on the Hound side. Charon's a very good late-game support. The Jade Dragons have a really nice team fight, even though most of their gods don't scale that well. Hera scales fine, Amma scales fine, but Anhur not scaling too well. Sylvanus obviously not scaling too well. Cama's a fine late-game hyper carry, can banish himself from the map, so it's always going to have some viability there. But double auto attack is going to scale for those objectives. It's going to give you maybe not great secure, but great objective potential. And I mean, the Dragons, I guess, have that too with the Alma.
Yeah, they're in a good spot to try and find like CC, engage, things like that. You know, a lot of... I'm going to pull it out just because, you know, conversation point. Mike, when he plays Afro, when it's ahead and they've got, you know, a good solo laner alongside it, never really have that many complaints. That being said, there's been quite a few drafts where it's not ahead and it's the only real form of engage, and it's like, man, you're going to try to stop him with Kiss? Like, it's not going to work. This time around, Sylvanus, Nika, Pull, Root, Hera, everything. Camazotz just being Camazotz. And like you said, the Ama, like, it feels like they've got so many rounds of engage.
No beads.
The engage has been Oathhh. Again, no beads for Dardez. Used them earlier. And the damage, finally, there. Oathhh puts up first blood, and the Hounds take an even further lead.
2,500 gold already, just from totems and that first blood right there. This is just a really good farming game by the Hounds. Maybe it doesn't look like they're playing great. It's obviously not been an exciting game, only 1-0, but just seeing how this team is out farming so well, already 7 minutes into the game, almost 3,000 gold. It's cool to watch how just well they're farming.
And that, man, that was unfortunate. That big shield buff still goes over to the Dragons, but I think both minis there went over to Neil. And that's maybe part of why, right? If you're pulling in a little bit of this, we saw blue buff invade. You've mentioned now 6-0 for the totems. First blood. You know, neutral camps being present at both mid camps, being present at the shield buff. Little things like that making huge plays for him. Admittedly, you know, when we see a lead like this, though, and it's facilitated more by kills, without those kills, you know, at least looking at, like, the items right now, there's, like, a couple tier 2s that the Hounds have, but there's not been big, like, power spikes yet. When do you expect to maybe see that big hurdle jumped over?
It actually should be the next 2-3 minutes when you finish your tier 2 item and they're just starting that tier 2 item. When you compare, I mean, Laz, maybe he goes for, actually, fight in mid.
Yeah, BennyQ, oh my god, getting absolutely shredded, but there's some peel coming from the team. He has the dash, but it's not far enough. Oh no, Benny goes down. The Dragons now surge forward. Not quite enough to lock down Oathhh and Neil, but more than enough to get rid of the mid laner. Now, 1-1 read the kills. The Dragons pull it back within the 2K-ish area.
And that is the combination of Sylvanus and Ghost actually ulting purple buff. 3v2 going to be happening here. Charon's also rotating in. Oathhh taking a little bit. Has no ult available.
Damage from Coast is good. Oathhh is able to get out thanks to the turtle. Coast is able to get out because he leaps, but... And look, this is important. When you commit your ult to the purple buff, you better get it, and he does. So at least the invade goes well.
He does get it. They secure purple, they get out, and nobody dies. And in that fight in mid, we actually see the combination Sylvanus, Hera. Benny doesn't have beads. Aegis is used, but he had already taken so much damage, so much CC, that he is just barely getting out 1 health, and then he slowly gets chased down and ends up getting killed. So that's kind of what you have to look out for. No beads into this Sylvanus, Hera. That's so much CC. If Benny's not positioning perfectly, exactly that can happen again.
And now no Aegis, so you don't even get to buy time in the right circumstances. Neil, Oathhh, they're in the jungle fishing for something. They find LASBRA, but I don't know.
Has ult too.
I was going to say that a level 9 Camazotz feels that threatened by this. Takes a lot of damage in the meantime, though. Maybe showcases exactly where it's at. Erlang Shen sometimes is like the guy, and then sometimes he disappears for ages. But, you know, with no mannequins, I'm a little surprised to see that amount of damage that quick.
Yeah, I mean, this Ada spike is so much stronger now. Flat pen, power, attack speed, everything this Erlang wants for that early portion of the game. Benny, no beads available, does just get the dash out. Yeah. Should be just a pretty fine fight. But look at that, 35 power, 25% attack speed, flat pen. And then the passive, which, granted, it's on kills, so it's not always useful. But when you do get those kills, sometimes that extra auto attack, that extra attack speed, movement speed, that you can get from this Erlang is enough to either live or get another kill.
Especially when you are, like you said, like at that point, doing your best to, I guess, just snowball the fight, right? Hey, I got a kill. Let's keep going. Let's keep chasing. Let's go, 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 go. Fast and aggressive. Speaking of which, that's exactly how I would describe Coast. Wow. What a great shot. The Anhur hits one more time, and with the impale finds a kill. Now Oathhh going to turn it around. Charon's going to CC him, and Oathh's going to pick up one in response. Now you got a 2v2. Dragon in support. Jungle in support. LASBRA, no ult. Oathhh, no ult. Heal comes through for the Erlang. Keeps him engaged, pull just a little wide there. Oathh able to step to the side. Mike's not done yet, but that's not going to keep this one going much longer.
And just chasing out a little bit. They know this purple buff is spawning, so I think they're just trying to trade out poke just enough to go for this invade. Another 2v2 happening. Oathh gets the shield from the Charon too. A lot of damage being taken. Med being forced too. Disengaged jump by LASBRA. Still playing up. Mike gets the pull.
What a pull! Brings Oathh right back in, and LASBRA wants a little more. They've got the damage, but not the trade. You've got Soul back in the equation. Goes for the purple buff. You lose Oathh, you secure your camp. But what an engage. I thought the Dragons for sure were going to peel off. Instead, stick to their guns, and they get a kill for it.
Yeah, I mean, they know purple buff timer, so they're just playing up for that. Coast gets that 1v1. Unfortunately, Charon ult comes through. His beads are ending, and he gets taunted. But he's looking for that 1v1 at that point to be able to pressure the purple buff, which is spawning after. But trade, nice rotation by Oathh. And then, I mean, maybe it looks weird that the Dragons chase out there.
Yeah.
It obviously doesn't look the greatest. But they're just trying to slowly take that trade. They have the healing advantage there with that Sylvanus, playing for that purple buff too. And they play it very well. Dragons cutting the lead down to about 1,500, mitigating that really strong early game. I mean, even that totem advantage, 8-1, getting mitigated pretty heavily by the Dragons.
Well, that's something we've seen. You know, I'm going to bring the Gladiators up because it feels like their early game is always a conversation that we get to have, and then their late game hasn't quite been there. But that kill onto Oathh, shutting down Oathh on the Hounds, is usually shutting down the lead.
Very
now,
true.
You've been able to get a kill onto Oathh, couple of invades that have gone your way. Oh, in that case, I'm just going to highlight the solo kill for Coast because who cares about the invade after. But also now that beacon, all of it fighting, as you said, against the pretty massive lead earlier that the Hounds were able to pick up. And so a lot of the things we were talking about, like, hey, when's that big power spike? It's when you get tier 2s and they don't have them, well, guess what? They've got them, or tier 3s, I should say, on that second item. In fact, Oathh has already gone into investing in his glyph, so he spent some of that gold elsewhere. But it might be a lot of prots, maybe too soon for him to do as much damage as LASBRA's going to do.
Coast still looking to bully out, but Oathh is here and blinks in.
Taunt going to be good. Again, no beads for 19 seconds here on Coast, but he goes for the ult. I love that he tries to turn some damage around, still falls, and the kill goes over to Oathh, but Coast, with presence of mind, gets a lot of damage out on the Stu in the meantime.
And Oathh doing what he needs to do on this Erlang. He's getting involved early. He's got a slightly, I mean, this is the normal Erlang build, but he's not going to be doing 100-0 damage right now. But he's going to be very tanky in those trades, and he's going to do enough that if there's somebody else with him, there is very high kill potential, especially if it's someone like Stu or Benny. But even Neil and Oathh at this point are very scary in their 2v2. Shields, heals, and I want to see them, you know, try to push this lead past just getting kills. Let's start looking for the Gold Furies. Yes, your lead is 2K, but I mean, you look at the pressure that's being put out in mid. Benny is going to hit 15 anytime soon now. Benny's actually pulling this Pyro, and he's going to solo it. This is what I want to see.
Aggressive plays in the right moments. Honestly, maybe a little necessary. We've talked a lot about neutral farm. That last one, shield buff stolen by Mike. Pyro confirmed, stun from BennyQ. Good on the Mike.
Oathh goes in.
Coming in. Rotation from
Big
Nika
beads.
comes in, and he wants a little more, but he's not going to be able to find it. The dazzling offensive used beads, like you said, used off of Oathh. So
And
a few things down and nothing crazy.
Yeah, and actually a huge beads there. He beads the ult by Sylvanus, the knockup by Dardez, and then he also beads the end of Nika's ult. So he
That's value.
mitigated a bunch of CC with that play right there, and he goes in and peels out just enough for Benny to get out also. And Benny didn't use a single relic there. Yes, Oathh did, but when you have this mid laner that's as important as this Ishtar is going to be, keeping her alive is going to be very important, and Oath's going to be hard to take down anyway with this breastplate, a little bit tankier in the build. So I'm glad that Oathh went in there, was happy to take a little bit of pressure off Benny.
The question is whether or not that pressure, again, is going to mean a lot in the next few minutes, right? Can you find Oathh within 2 minutes, put pressure on him? Can you pull Benny's relics in the next 2 minutes? Or can they go maybe for a Gold Fury? And you're pointing out now, Dardez as well, no beads.
Yeah, I actually think Oathh got the beads when he went in also, so he traded out like 3 ults for just his beads, and he also got Dardez's beads. Now, high kill potential there, especially, I mean, we've already seen it one time. So much lockdown on the Erlang, and Ishtar on top has the stun on the ultimate, the root on the dash, a lot of CC there, and even the Mez on the 2, so a ton of CC in this 2v2 by those.
Oathhh now deep, goes for Dardez, has the taunt. That part's gonna be great. The rest of it's going the way of the Dragons. Argus dropped Mike as well, went for the knock-up. They're gonna deal with Argus no problem here on the Hounds. Beacon, still about a minute and a half out. So maybe no big pressure to be found here. And they're dancing on top of a sentry ward without knowing it. Now control, maybe gonna be massive. You've got a rotation from Ducky. Nika rotated in the last fight. Ducky's now over here. Teleports up for Nika if necessary, but this should be a Gold Fury pull the way the Hounds are standing. Neil, gonna start it up. LASBRA, Mike, Coast, immediately in the vicinity of Dardez.
Frenzy.
And Nika now looping around the back, but they're gonna go for the solo lane on the Amaterasu. Look for the lockdown. Here's the wave to give some CC, but Oathhh is low. Oathhh needs the shield. Oathhh barely able to get out of there. LASBRA chasing, but is he chasing too deep? They need a little CC. Unable to find it, but the kill at least should go 1-for-1. No, LASBRA with a leap gets out of there. The one kill necessary. Dragons find themselves Oathhh. Find themselves an open left side of the map, and with Nika still over here, should have the damage to pick up the Fury.
And the entire Hounds team actually tries to turn onto Nika and kill him, but Nika's got so much defensiveness right now, and only Ducky here looking to defend this Gold Fury, unable to get the out secure, Jade Dragon secured after that winning fight. But even if we do have mages in meta in solo lane, these warriors are still very tanky, especially at this point in the game. That's a hard kill.
And meanwhile, look at where Ducky is at. Has the build that we've come to expect and know and love from our solo lane mid-laner, mid-mages. And well, he's just not going to stand up to what Nika is able to. That being said, if BennyQ gets those shotgun autos, jeez Louise, the damage he is able to output. Not enough to shred through Mike or Nika, but enough to at least create some issues for him. And Mike really kind of leaning into the healer aspect of his Sylvanus that we haven't gotten to see in a while.
Yeah, going for that Fey Blessed kind of turns him into a little bit of like a Yamoja, healing, shielding, more defensive style. No blink, no surprise. LASBRA ult is available, no mana when he does land, and they are chasing out Neil on top too.
Yeah, with Neil trying to find the lockdown, the wave should be enough and keeps LASBRA locked
so many
in.
ults.
Taunt from Oathhh, maybe an over-investment, but a kill is a kill, and that's how the Hounds have to look at it. They're going to pick that up, no problem. Coast, though, wants a little more. Disapparate worked well for Stu. Where's the pillar? There it is. Ult as well. Coast.
Impale?
Going in the Impale. The damage is good. 1 or 2 more autos. And that is a solo kill for him. And it goes to show that, first off, 2 levels up, but also, I don't think Coast understands the word fear.
No, I mean, he was walking under that tower as he was looking for the 1v1 autos tower and jumps in immediately. He is looking for that solo kill. And I mean, we've came to understand what Oathhh wants to do with this Anhur.
Yeah,
he wants his team to play a 4v4 on the other side, and he wants to just jump in off cooldown so he does not get punished by a jungler, and he actually looks for a bunch of solo kills. Dragons grouping up around this Fire Giant. Looks like more of a bait than a commit, but if nobody shows up, they'll commit.
19 minutes in, Fire Giant, like you said, at 75%. Neil goes in, Neil
CC.
just gets shredded. Knock up from Mike does a majority of the work, but then what are you doing after silenced by Nika? And it's going to be a simple pick. They drop the Fire Giant, knowing they don't have the advantage there. Not much to fight over, so instead pressure in mid. Tier 1 towers, that's where the Dragons go. And it is a very simple job to knock that down. Ducky,
Polymorph!
oh my god, the Polymorph catches the dash, and they kill him off the front line for the Hounds. Just gone, and now the Tier 2 should follow them into the ground. The aggression from the Dragons in the last couple of minutes has just turned up to 11. And not too much they can do. Argus, 6th manning for the Dragons, gets some space, gets the Tier 2, and gets them a lot of gold.
And as soon as Mike finishes his compassion, it's just a full-on grouping. 5v5 fight on this Fire Giant, looking for a pick. Nika TP's in 5 strong with Alma and a Hunter that's in a good spot. This Fire Giant's going to go down pretty quick.
Now they're burning it. Neil is going to get back. I wonder if he remembers what happened last time he stepped in here. Goes for the wave, throws it out. CC's good on the Mike and onto LASBRA, but not enough to lock him down. Oathhh, Benny separated from the fight. Oathhh rejoins, but Benny is isolated, killed off, and hunted down by the king of the jungle himself, Anhur. Locks him up and Coast. Now
Back
2,
again.
2, and 3. And why not? They're just running in almost conveyor belt style for you to kill him off. 30 seconds, no mid laner. Ducky's back on the board. Fire Giant, half health. Nika engages this time, and they're going to walk forward. Ult from Coast, now jump in, and maybe he bites off more than he can chew. Tycho drums actually fear them away, and the Dragons maybe stay alive because of it. Neil impaled before he can stop the back, but the back it stops anyway. It seems like the Hounds have been successful, at least stalling the Fire Giant.
Stalling indeed, but I mean, Dragon's slowly climbing with that lead, and we saw this yesterday. When you're playing into this mage comp, mage poke style solo laner, you don't want to trade poke. That's not how you want to play into this. Dragons do the exactly what they need to do. Instead of trading poke, they just all in. They just have either LASBRA in, or Nika dash, or Mike look for the pull. Mike just walks up and ults. But that's exactly what they need to do. They're doing it perfectly. Gold Fury for the Hounds.
Oni Fury's low. Hounds able to secure it, but you lose 2. No, it's the worst case scenario. You lose your support for a Fury. Maybe you can have the conversation of worthwhile. But jungle goes down as well. Oathhh 4-3-0. No beads for another 80 seconds. He's picked up, again, his build kind of bouncing back and forth. Damage and protections. But now, with 2 gone on the Hounds, the Dragons see fit to go for the FG. And they might find a little bit more in the process. No Hounds are on the right, so the Fire Giant's going to be theirs. LASBRA is alone on left. Thought maybe would look for a 1v1. Instead might find himself in a 3v1. Has to play careful around the tier 1 as the game continues to get aggressive. But I like that the Hounds are not just rolling over. They recognize, you know what, we can't fight the FG. We can at least get some gold in our pocket, use this Oni Fury, then fall back for the defense.
Yeah, exactly. They're trading, maybe not perfectly, but the trades are acceptable. Down 2,000-3,000 gold, especially at 22 minutes, is negligible. I mean, you're looking at 3, getting to that 4th full item on both sides. Starters coming through very soon for the Dragons, still not yet, other than Mike. But off this back, they've got Fire, they got a tier 2, a tier 1, and they got this Pyro. You should see a bunch of starters coming through very soon for the Dragons. I hope that they just look to farm with this Fire Giant, get the tier 2s, maybe not committing to that Phoenix. Just, we saw how they need to do it. Just bait around this Fire Giant, heal up, have Nika pull. You're not going to be taking much damage, especially when you get that Death Embrace finished on Alma. You can tank fire for lifetimes.
Guess what he just did? Finished the Death Embrace on Alma. Which means he's going to be tanking things up for lifetimes. It's going to be dangerous here for the Hounds. They only have 1 tier 2 left standing. It's the one in left lane, though. That's exactly where the Titans are going to spawn as the Dragons capture the 3rd beacon. Now the question is going to be what the next stop is, right? You've got Fire Giant, 2.5 minutes, just a little shy. Titans on left. Maybe looking for some upgrades, maybe looking for some farm here. The question's going to be where they go.
And now they actually finished starters on almost everyone but LASBRA.
Yeah.
But I think they're in a good enough spot where they can siege a Phoenix here. They have 2 minutes still on this Fire. They've got really good sustain. They've got good poke onto this. Yeah, I mean, no poly means you don't have like great burst or anything like that. But Coast is not going to be too threatened here. He does have very easy immunity. So I want to see the Dragons push this, but push it a little slower. You don't have to all in, really.
The biggest threat to Coast sometimes is Coast. And
Is himself.
It's leaping in to play as aggressively as possible. We'll see whether or not that ends up happening. Has a lot around him. I mean, Mike, you know, we haven't talked about it a lot. Hit 1 really, really nice pull early this game. And we haven't seen too many, but when you're at the Phoenix, that's maybe the biggest threat. You can't step up to defend. Luckily for Neil, that one goes a little wide. Oh my god, only lucky because he's not dead outright. Instead, takes so much damage, so much poke, forced to fall back. Wave comes out to try and separate the fight, but it's Coast with the autos. Coast with the Phoenix. Maybe the Dragons with a retreat. They get exactly what they need. Maybe no kills, but more than enough done to open the base. What was 2,000, almost 3,000 gold in favor of the Hounds. Much earlier this game, 7,000 now for the Dragons. Call it 6,500. Their Titan's still alive, still marching. They've got minions on left, fire minions. By the time the Titan actually gets there, we'll be hanging out with him. Mike, again, unable to find the pull that he's looking for here. We'll see. All it takes is 1, and it changes the game. He's going to take a lot of poke from the Phoenix, a little bit of damage from Stu and BennyQ. As they dance around, minion wave steps forward. The Titan being met by Ducky. So a 5v4 in mid. And now the engage is going to be there. Knock up good onto Coast. Maybe some CC enough to cause the damage. 20 seconds, 25 seconds on the Fire Giant. Titans going into the Titan room. That's
Nika.
going to be the go button. BennyQ is low. Nika gets to the back, and LASBRA cleans up the kill. BennyQ gone, and the opening is finally there. Mid-Phoenix
They can
knocked
end.
down. You've got the Titan. Do you go for it? You've got the healing. You've got the FG for 10 more. They don't quite have the confidence, which is what you need to step into the Titan room. Instead, Dragons back away.
Relics were looking pretty good there. I almost think an end call, like one more kill off of
for
all
sure.
that CC they have. End call is entirely possible. Play a little bit safer, go back for the Primal Fury, get ready for this next Fire Giant. I mean, this isn't a too safe call. You know, we talk about this sometimes where it's like they're playing too safe. They're not pushing their lead well enough. This is just, let's go finish off our builds. We're still going to be getting more XP or more gold. Get our full builds. Get ready for this next Fire Giant. And then next fight makes it a lot easier.
I'd even say, I mean, they got almost max value that you could get out of
True.
that Fire Giant, right? Like, you cleaned up the rest of the map. Yeah, you got a couple neutral objectives. You got 2 Phoenixes. Yeah, I'm not complaining about the Dragons and what they were able to do. Sieging, especially, has been this team's struggle. And you know, sometimes maybe it's just late-game calls, right? It's very easy to line it up and say, hey, it's the sieging. But sometimes it's where you're putting that pressure, things like that. Knocking down those 2 Phoenixes is a very, very important task for this team.
And Mike opting for the, not the normal breastplate glyph that we usually
No.
see. Usually we see the Determination, the one on the Eldritch Hounds high.
Yeah, the gold boy.
Yeah, the gold one. The Eldritch Hounds have 2 of them. Mike has Breastplate of Vigilance, which is giving him that auto attack reduction for the enemies when he ults in that range. And that 60 unit range is actually huge. That is auto attack range. So if Mike is getting hit by Stu or by Benny, as long as Benny's not in the long range auto attack form, then he'll be reducing their auto attacks for 5 seconds, especially into a triple auto attack comp. I like this pickup.
60 units is actually wild
Huge.
to have. Yeah, 55 is like is just straight up the auto attack. So like they have to be within it. If you're going to hit Mike, you have to be there. And I'm gonna tell you, if he's ulting, you're in it. So really good opening for him. I also personally, I'm a sucker for anti-auto attack items, especially when you've got an Ishtar, you've got an Erlang, and you've got a Soul on the other side. So solid pickup from Mike. Just short. That pull, if it had a couple extra units, pulls in.
Stu?
Oh my god, would pull in Neil, but it's Stu who's jumped on Stu, who's in trouble. Luckily, your Soul Disapparate gets some distance, but it's not far enough. LASBRA weaves the shot in and finds the damage necessary, gets the opening kill for what could be the final fight. Titan in trouble. Damage is there, and the Dragons are good. They get themselves the first win of this set.
And I think when we got to those 5v5s, the Hounds just never had an opportunity to actually go in. Their engage is their jungler, who's not going to be tanky enough to actually get that engage off. And then you see in the jungle support, it's characters that play well in neutral when you're not getting engaged on. And you saw how the Dragons exploited that. They just all in. They did exactly what they needed to do.
And from behind early on as well, right? I mean, we got to see it, and some of it was leveled out by kills. Some of it was just pressure on the map. Like the Hounds, when there was no answer from the Dragons, and of course Totem as well, factored into, what, 2,500 I think is where we saw it go to. And then within 10 minutes after we were like, all right, here's where the power spikes are going to be coming up, suddenly it was dead even again. And then the next time they fight, it just slowly pulled over. That siege from the Fire Giant was maybe the biggest deal. It brought so much over to the Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, really great mid-game by the Dragons. Usually, I mean, sieging is where we usually see the Dragons' mistakes. No mistakes for those sieging. That was almost perfect across the board. I actually don't think anybody died on the Dragons for any of their sieges. So great plays by them all around, especially in the late game.
And it helped. I was waiting for like, okay, when's the pull going to happen to clean this up? They didn't need the pull because the damage, specifically Coast, but kind of everybody on there was just able to knock down anybody that stood in their way. Dragons look good, and they strike first here. 1-0 lead for them. We'll see how well they can continue and what the Hounds have to answer right after this quick break.
Ah, all right. About time it got interesting around here. It's okay to be impressed. Wiki wiki. Don't worry, I gotcha.
That's right. If you go over to advanced.gg, you can pick up your brand new Tropical Splash flavor or the Maui Shaker, brought to us by our good friends at advanced.gg. So make sure you go and pick that up now. The strawberry peach flavor with the Maui's Tropical Splash, the shaker, and all kinds of other great options available for you over at Advanced GG. If you buy any single item or just anything that's not already at some kind of a discounted price, make sure you use code SMITE and you get 10% off of your order. Thanks so much to Advanced GG for partnering with us once more to bring another god from the battleground now into your own living room, kitchen, wherever you may keep your shaker at that point. I don't know where everybody keeps theirs. I carry mine around the apartment all the time, so sometimes in the bedroom just chilling out, sometimes kitchen, living room, wherever, or whenever we're watching a game of SMITE like this one. Jade Dragons, a bit of a rough start for them. Try to look up. First blood happens. I look and go, okay, cool, first blood. Wait, why are the Dragons down like 3,000 gold? What happened? Turns out they just need a little bit of time to ramp up, get their team fights going, and allow LASBRA to really try and facilitate this map to help the Dragons get back into their spot.
Yeah, I think this was a Jade Dragons as a whole victory. I saw a lot of good from VaporishCoast. He was getting way more pressure over in duo lane than Stuart. Unfortunately, the Anhur bodes well for this squad, of course. Then you look over, you see Dardez is popping off, you see LASBRA is popping off. You're like, okay, the Jade Dragons as a whole are just able to find a lot of success here. Sure, early farm definitely wasn't in their favor. The Eldritch Hounds were just farming the map better. They were playing the objectives decently well also. However, at some points the Hounds were trading like 2 lives for an objective, and it starts to get less and less worth it, right? Kills end up winning the day as the game continues, and that's sort of what happened there. The Jade Dragons coming out on top, and I think the Eldritch Hounds definitely have some adaptations to make. Trying to get the Raijin was a big part of their draft, right? They first picked that Raijin. In doing so, end up giving up the Amaterasu, the Anhur. I'm thinking the Raijin was alright. Like, Ducky does some good damage. He's 0-1-0, a part of none of the kills. Wasn't really the biggest impact player, so maybe just trying to switch up the draft strategy could be a good first look here for the Eldritch Hounds. Oathhh was fine on the Erlang Shen, but still not my favorite pick in the current meta. It just seems like the setup for the team was good, but when they were able to get online, I guess the lack of them able to get online was the big issue there for the Hounds.
I think one of the big things that really also stood out to me in that game, as we saw on the post stat there, 11,000 healing from Mike on the Sylvanus.
Oh, yeah.
And not a drop of anti-heal on the other side. And it's not just the Sylvanus. You've got lifesteal coming from the carry. You've also got Camazotz with all the built-in sustain that he has.
Yep.
Got to have a little bit of anti-heal going into that one, maybe a byproduct of the composition that they built. And that was maybe a little bit of the struggle we saw in the Kings set yesterday, where Kings go up, they get this health support, it's a great option, and you look over what the Warriors had built, they have a single curse donk all the way until like the very end of the game where they're able to get like a Brawler's Beat Stick on a Robin, and that's not the best applicator of anti-heal in that case. So maybe the Eldritch Hounds, if the Dragons go to a similar composition, maybe try and find something that can get a little bit of anti-heal in. But already through the picks and bans for game number 2, or at least through the bans portion in the first phase of it. Athena, Olarun, Opwash on one side. That's the Jade Dragons bans. Hounds take away Anhur, take it away from Coast specifically. And then Umoja Ratatoskr leaves open a first pick Chernobog for the Eldritch Hounds. In return, they're giving the Jade Dragons 2 of the top picks right now, Raijin and Amaterasu for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, but grabbing both. My guess is the Hounds were okay with grabbing Cherno because Raijin and Ama were both open. You think the Jade Dragons are only going to take one because they're both traditionally solo laners. But the Jade Dragons do just grab them both. And you think that means the Raijin goes over to solo and the Ama goes to jungle? Or you just send Raijin over to mid lane and you let the Amaterasu solo? That's probably what I would do in this instance. I'm not a big fan of the Ama jungle. We've seen it once or twice. Definitely 2 times at least, and I didn't like it either time. So I would definitely prefer the Raijin going over towards mid if that's the case. Either way, the Eldritch Hounds get the Chernobog. They grab a Fafnir as well. So duo lane, very highly prioritized here, you would think, unless BennyQ takes that Chernobog over towards mid, which is still a possibility. But if you don't grab the soul here, definitely could just be banned away. The Jade Dragons have that option and not let Stuart get one of his magical ADCs.
Yeah, the soul and the Freya still options if Stu wants to go that way and not take the Chernobog. We've been seeing maybe a little more often the Chernobog has been going to the mid laners.
Yep.
Unless there's a very high priority mid lane maids you would want to take in that place, but we'll have to wait and see where the Chernobog lands for the Eldritch Hounds. Opposite end, Aphrodite for Mike. And now seeing Aphrodite for the Jade Dragons, immediately my call for them is something that can pair with it well in lane, but also something that Mike can attach to when we start getting to the team fight stage, maybe a little bit later. Something in the jungle that can try to act as that hyper carry. And I think the Eldritch Hounds now recognizing one of those potentials, Camazotz, taken away from LASBRA after game number 1's performance. The Jade Dragons going to focus their efforts on Oathhh a little bit here, taking away the Ao Kuang and then banning away the soul from Stu. So if we want to see a magical hunter from Stu, it's most likely going to have to come in the Freya, or we could just be seeing this Chernobog go to him and almost essentially kind of a wasted ban, but not necessarily a waste on the Dragons because maybe they're trying to force this Chernobog over into the dual lane.
Definitely a possibility. Cherno has good just pressure in general, but that's something that Stuart is going to lean towards, especially when you have the Fafnir in that lane. It's not going to bring too much. So, you know, I think that the option of just leaving Stu by himself on the Chernobog and have him fly in if he needs to, it's definitely still there. And you want to talk about things to attach to the Aphrodite. Of course, Erlang Shen could be one, but I'm thinking like Lancelot is also a good look. Not going to be locked in just yet, though. Priority towards Hachiman. Maybe saving to see what Oathhh picks so LASBRA can get a good matchup in the jungle is the call. And with the Ao Kuang banned away, the Camazotz being banned away, still, I got to think that Susano and that Erlang are picks that both the Jade Dragons and the Eldritch Hounds, more so the Hounds, are looking towards. Throw the Lancelot in the mix as well. I mean, when you get this late in the draft and both junglers are taking this many bans as well as that need to pick up their jungle, you got to think similar gods are going to be on the minds of both of them.
What if we've been bamboozled by the Dragons already? And what if this Amaterasu just goes jungle, hypothetically? I mean, we've seen it from a couple of teams. I believe Panatom played it, but before that it was Sino kind of bringing it to the jungle.
Yep.
Always an option.
I said it at the beginning, but I don't want to see it.
Don't want to see it.
And I still don't, so the option is there. But let's just assume Dardez has taken Raijin and Nika has taken Ama, because that would be the better selection.
That makes the most sense, given kind of the status quo that we've seen established.
I don't care about sense. It's just better. You can't tell me the Ama jungle is better. I won't allow it. The proof is not in the pudding.
Well, there is no pudding, so there can be no proof.
Bingo.
We'll see what the Eldritch Hounds draft up for their final two, taking some time on their last selections. We'll see if this Chernobog is going for Stu, or if this one is going over to BennyQ in the mid lane. With this Fafnir already having one hunter, you've got some decent threat around objective. Pele being hovered, as well as an Agni, leads me to believe that this one will be a Chernobog for Stuart, and that BennyQ is going to go with one of his traditional mages, Agni. Going to be the lock-in, along with Serqet. We've been seeing a sneaky amount of Serqet as of recent. Felt like we went for a good bit of, or maybe a good stretch of this year where not a whole lot of Serqet. Didn't really have a whole place in the meta at the moment. Now starting to jump back up here for the Eldritch Hounds, coupling with the Agni. We'll wait to see what this lock-in is for the Dragons before we dive into that one. But what are your thoughts on Serqet right now? How does she kind of fit in with the jungle meta?
I'm actually a big fan of Serqet if the play style for Serqet is looking good, right? And I think that's a big difference maker. The sort of hybrid tank Serqet that still tries to one-shot late game and builds 2 or 3 tank items is not my favorite. I like full glass cannon. The issue, of course, is you just die, but if you know someone's beads are down and you get there first, then you can just make sure they just die, right? That's kind of the idea. You're worried about anti-heal. Aphrodite's going to provide a lot of that healing, then yeah, Serqet going to be a good look, but it's all about positioning. You have to play extremely safe in that regard.
Well, now we got to play the fun game of musical chairs here, Charlie, because it's a Poseidon locked in last now for the Jade Dragons. So a few comps coming to mind at least. Could see Raijin mid, Ama jungle, Poseidon solo. You could see the Raijin and the Poseidon swap and have the Poseidon mid, the Raijin solo, still Ama jungle. Could see Poseidon jungle with the Amaterasu solo, Raijin mid. Of those three, is there one that kind of stands out to being the better composition for you?
As I've said, I do not like the Ama in the jungle. Doesn't mean that it can't be played. Doesn't mean that it isn't going to be played. I just hate it. Because you're building so much tank stats just to exist, your late game burst is non-existent. It just doesn't. It's so difficult to pilot this god later on. So if the Jade Dragons are trying to win pre-30, then yeah, pick your Ama jungle. It's going to be crazy for objectives. You got Poseidon damage as well. You've got Hachi. Show up towards Fire Giant. It's going to die quickly. But if we're talking about the 1v1 between Serqet and Ama late game, Serqet's never going to get hit by Dazzling Offensive. Like, why would she ever? Just Deathbane away, jump away. You know, you're never going to lose that 1v1. And it's not like Ama's got good poke. It's just auto attack trades and trying all in. So, not my favorite, but other teams have seen the value in this pick. So, we'll see how the Jade Dragons decide to pilot it.
Do you see any value in potentially Poseidon going to the jungle for this composition instead? And, you know, we've already talked about your disdain of the Ama jungle. Do you see maybe more value in a Poseidon jungle for the Jade Dragons instead?
Well, with how good, you know, the solo lane mage builds are, I see no reason why you don't have at least the Raijin building sort of tanky in that case. So full burst Poseidon is just interesting. He farms the map quite well if you're throwing him in the jungle. Again, though, you got to look towards the elephant in the room, the Serqet.
There's no Ganesh.
Yeah, the Serqet is the elephant in the room, the scorpion in the room in this case. And you're not going to have a good time in that 1v1. Sure, if you get ahead, anytime Serqet gets near you, Whirlpool Kraken. If you get behind, Serqet doesn't care about any of that.
Well, let's see where the Jade Dragons put these picks up against the Eldritch Hounds. It's game number 2. Will the Dragons go up 2-0 or the Hounds tie things up? Let's jump right in with our casters.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Trelly. An interesting one, Bobby, that we're going to be jumping into here. And it will be Poseidon solo. Raijin in mid and Ama in the jungle. Which I'll admit, I'm kind of happy we dodged the bullet of a Poseidon jungle.
Same. I'm on the same boat as Trelly. I don't love the Ama jungle, but I'll take it over the Poseidon jungle.
Something that, man, Poseidon always stands out. We saw it yesterday. He can be great. In fact, if I remember correctly, talking to Aurora, it was really funny because the conversation around the Poseidon came up, and we were talking more about... I was asking about it in solo, and he just goes, well, I love queuing it in my ranked games because it lets me, like, I can just go to objectives and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is like an Aurora original TM, right, that comes out. It is fun to watch around objectives, right? Kraken, especially in this day and age, is the best secure that we get in games outside of when Scylla gets locked in, so we don't have a lot of those, like, burst mages. But if you miss it, good luck feeling useful in the late game team fight.
Yeah, and we saw couple missed Krakens last time we saw this Poseidon solo, but you're kind of just trying to force stuff when you play it. You're also just trying to get that same, you know, Pythags, Vamp Shroud build. And actually both mages for the Jade Dragons are opting for that same build, the Vamp Shroud. Maybe not Pythags for the Raijin, he's going for the Book of Thoth, but at least somewhat more lifesteal oriented, somewhat more hybrid build. Something that they'll have to play around. I think when I see the full damage Raijin, I really don't like it as much as I like the Vamp Shroud Raijin. Same thing Trelly said. But when you have to go into the Pythags, you don't really have as great clear. You get so much more damage from Book. You're not really that threatened, so it's almost better. Oathhh actually taking a lot of damage at mid. It almost gets taken down.
It's poked out, like you said. Raijin offers that threat. I can't believe it, but Oathhh is walking up, goes for the taunt, looks for a little more. Has BennyQ as backup. Level 3 now for the Agni. So maybe they could look for it. What I like watching specifically the way Oathhh is dancing, right? LASBRA is kind of following some of the balance, but it is pressure and aggression from the Hounds right now. I'm also going to watch with rapt interest the totem counter, because last time that got so out of hand for the mage. Maybe it's going to happen again. Duo lane. A lot of poke being traded back and forth. Oathhh once again in trouble. That's going to be a dash forward, and Raijin, oh, with the fadeaway shot, finds what he needs. First blood, 2 minutes in, goes to the Dragons.
And huge silence by Laz there does not allow Oathhh to get out quickly, and then they're able to chase him down afterwards. So nice first blood by the Dragons. That early game going their way this game, you know, 800 gold lead. You got that first blood. You got a nice little lead. Actually, I was curious to see if Dardez was going to dash there on Benny. Maybe just look for a big trade. Does not use the dash, but different game already. We're looking at the Dragons playing that more aggressive style now. Yes, you should kind of be doing that when you're playing this Amaterasu, because Amaterasu solo is not very strong early. Amaterasu jungle, she's got some high burst damage with that 2-3, and she's also got good trading potential with the autos.
Dardez needs to be careful. Oathhh, no blink, jumps forward, dash is there, taunt is good, pulls Dardez back in, flame wave stun, catches the dash, but the dash comes back. And Dardez
Neil
hits to the back of the tower, buddy. Are you safe? All you need is one good hammer. Neil jump in, gets the kill deep in the tier 1. And a great rebuttal for the mid lane kill, or the jungle kill they just had on Oathhh.
and Mike actually at the green buff.
Yeah.
He's going to be going down here. Kind of depends on how long does it take.
What can an Afro do? Buy time, heal up a little bit. You gotta assume. Yeah, there's the top.
Wait, he's low on
It's
mana.
gonna happen. Somebody's gotta get it. Mike, still good for now.
It's actually a lot of time wasted.
Yeah, this is farming time. Even BennyQ's come over at this point, and you've got some damage. Mike might actually look for a turnaround. Luckily, the cooldowns are not there.
Bold.
But BennyQ was in a much more precarious spot than he really should have been given the circumstances.
Yeah, he walked through the Lovebirds. Mike uses that shell, thinks he almost has maybe cooldowns coming up to get that kill. Fortunately, not quick enough did they come up. But a lot of time wasted. It may look like a weird play, but he invades speed buff. He secures speed. Waste time of Oathhh 30 seconds, waste 20, 25 seconds of Benny's time. And that entire time, his entire team is just not getting pressured, and they're just able to farm. And because of that, also, Oathhh still doesn't even have that Jotun's finish, which is kind of when you want to see that Serqet get involved.
Yeah.
When she gets that first spike. Level 1 to 4 Serqet, no Jotuns, not scary. Level 5 Serqet with Jotuns, one of the most terrifying gods on the map.
Change it. That's a wow. It's a big difference. There
Drastic.
We go. Drastic
That's
difference.
what you're
That was
looking
like one of my brains like trying. It was the fusion of two words. Instead, sometimes you just gotta ignore them. But keep an eyes on Ama. Atalanta's bow picked up. We saw that just last game for the Erlang. Now we'll have to see where he goes with it. It does feel like Oathhh right now is in a better overall position to do jungle things than an Ama is into a position to do jungle things, just given the kit and inherent nature. So what are we waiting for LASBRA? Like, are we just, okay, cool, you know, either next power spike item-wise or just straight up, like, see at level 20, brother, like, have fun, farm up, versus, like, Oathhh who can jump in, taunt, etc., or can LASBRA, like, now that he has ult, maybe start to look for something?
Yeah, the problem is Ama ult takes so long to channel, so it's not something you can just play off this, you know, taunt or Serqet ult and just kill somebody off of that. It's a slightly different style. It's almost like a... I don't even know how to classify it. It's like a hybrid kind of esque style where you go in, you kind of trade a little bit early, kind of like the Erlang, but with less CC. I think the strength of Ama is always objectives, and with this build in the jungle, her objectives are just better. And I think that's what it comes down to. Her ganks aren't very good. Yes, she does a little bit of damage. Yes, she's got some survivability. But, I mean... Trelly talked about this on desk. I disagree. I think this Ama jungle is okay. A lot of times you're only picking it just to take it away, because Ama jungle is not better at jungling than a lot of the assassins, or even some of the other warriors like that Erlang. I might even take Cyno's Bologna over the Ama, because I think that makes a little bit more sense, because she's got, you know, somewhat better gank potential. But, I mean, all in all, to answer your question, I guess, because I went on a little bit of tangent, I think you're playing...
You saw red, Ama jungle,
Ama
just like,
jungle.
you were like having flashbacks to ranked games.
It's like the late game portion where she really excels. Her objectives become a lot better. She can die without getting one shot, and she's got somewhat high damage potential.
So we'll keep our eyes, I guess, in this case, more on Oathhh. Much like I was saying in Game 1, it does feel like these two pace setters for these games, although right now, looking to set the pace, the Dragons get aggressive on Neil. He's a jumper, so he's going to be just fine. Oathhh, though, might be looking for some sort of response. This is the
Blink
downside.
available.
Even with the blink, oh my god, finds the taunt, goes, gets the grab, forces the beats from Nika, has to dash away if you're Oathhh. Kraken. It's a lot of damage this early on, and that trade away with the Poseidon goes pretty well for the Dragons.
Yeah, and that was LASBRA ganking Ducky, and that's kind of why you see the downside of this Ama. That gank was not even close. Ducky was 75% health. All he lost was the beads, really. And he almost turned and actually got a kill. I think if Oathhh is there slightly faster, they're actually able to pick up the kill and maybe even get a two kills there if he's a bit quicker. But, I mean, Alma's just farming. Once she gets that breastplate, it's a little bit different because she has slightly more survivability. But Oathhh kind of going for that same build. I think last time we saw the Serqet jungle, it was that Jotun's breastplate build. You just want to speed get to that 40% and then just punish those relics being down.
Hammer in duo lane. And this time around, you know what? 8 minutes last time we were talking about a like 2,500, almost 3,000 gold lead for the Hounds. We have 300-ish gold separating these teams, and that's at any particular moment going to change wave to wave. So as close as you can get. Pressure, though, has been there. I am a little nervous, right? Because it feels like the better, you know, we talk about the better gank potential right now, and Oathhh is on the right-hand side of the map. No beads for Nika, but Poseidon's deep under the tower, so no pressure, no position to try and get aggressive. And, you know, that gank potential feels right, but then, you know, I start to think late game, and I think, man, Ama, real good in team fight. Raijin, good for team fight. Afro, good at keeping people alive, and as long as Nika hits some Krakens, we can depend on the Poseidon as well. Now, that's a big if. We've seen too many times.
Too many.
Especially in high-pressure games. Remember, this is a fight for third, where Poseidon Kraken sometimes just don't hit. And I mean gods, I mean objectives, I mean anything that stands on the map that you are trying to. For some reason, they always end up being just a little off. And so if Nika's feeling that pressure, maybe he's aligned himself up to the Poseidon curse.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times, Poseidon's strength lies in that ultimate. If you miss the ultimate, you're not going to be very useful. Gold Fury pulled by the Dragons for here. Can they get here in time? Neil jumps in, unable to get the steal, but he's going to be transforming, looking for an ult 4v4.
Can he find a fight after? That's really a big question. Jumps forward. Should have a stun on to Mike. Are they going to let Mike die, or are they going to try to fight for him? Mike will go down, and the chase is no longer going to concede or continue for the Hounds. The Dragons concede. Support for Gold Fury. Tale as old as time. Just a simple trade leaves you slightly ahead.
And after that, game is in a pretty standstill spot. Ducky hits a nice little pluck here. This is basically like watching two warriors fight. Very little kill potential. Even if Ducky's damage is a little bit higher, they both have good sustain. They both have good damage. Very low threat here without a jungle. Just going to see them hitting each other over the head a little bit. Ducky trying to get that tier 2 item. And I think the more we get to this mid portion of the game, the more we'll see how these teams want to play. Because there is split push potential on the Hounds. We've seen this Chernobog head to a side lane and just sit over there the entire game. And we've seen it yesterday. As recent as yesterday, this Chern just does not leave the lane. So curious to see if Stu kind of opts for, you know, a little bit more team fighting, a lot more ult orient towards the team fight style, or if it's just keep pressuring the left side.
I love seeing Neil be annoying. So you got to be maybe a little bit more than annoying to be completely successful. Gold Fury, as early as it was taken for the Dragons, not a huge lead. At the pace of game we've been going, faster than last time, but pick-oriented as of right now. And still, honestly, maybe a little bit around coast right now is what I'm going to keep my eyes on. Oathhh comes in, locks down Mike, forces out the ult, and that's going to give them the opportunity to get aggressive, but you've got the cavalry if you're the Dragons. Dardez comes in to help clean things up. The taiko drums locked down, and you need one more hit. Stu's so low. Stu not able to make it into the air, and a great couple of kills for the Dragons in the chase is not over. Dash forward, body blocks, good. Dardez does what's necessary and picks up another kill for the Dragons.
And so many abilities put into Mike, which he just ults to immune all of it. The CC, the damage he gets out, and Benny not able to rotate into the fight as much as the rest of the Dragons comp was. And with that, I mean, you kind of see the problem with Serqet. She's very single target oriented. I want to kill this person I am ulting. And if you can't do that, like this Afro stops, which it's always been a weird pick. It's like picking Serqet into Geb. Yes, you can kill them, but it's got to be earlier into the game where you have to have a lot of abilities to kind of clean them up. And we see it there. A lot of abilities put into Mike, not enough damage. He gets out, and then they just overstep. They get taken down. But now Beacon spawn. Looks like a little fight might break out here. Both Soul Lander's rotating. LASBRA actually in right lane right now.
And good knock up from Ducky. Like you said, with LASBRA gone, a theoretical numbers advantage, although that's going to be permanent no matter what for the Hounds, thanks to Chernobog, going to be on the beacon, and pretty lackluster capture, if I'm being honest. And everybody stepped up. Everybody looked like they wanted to fight. And then, yeah, they just kind of backed off. There were 8 people around there, and now 6 of them have traveled over towards the right side jungle. But it looks like farm up on camps. Beacon goes to Hounds. And inbound, they need something a little bit more. Fury's going to come back up, and that's probably the next big contention, considering the gold lead the Dragons have started to build up.
Yeah, and when you have this Ama, you want to play around those objectives. That's what you're playing for. So, with Ama, with Gold Fury spawning very soon, I want to see the Dragons kind of get ready for that. The global potential is on the side of the Eldritch Hounds. They have this Chernobog, so you always have to be worried about that. Especially this timing that's about to start working out. Oathhh and actually 2v2 happening over here. Kraken does not hit. Oathhh jumps out. Ducky's still standing his ground, gets a double push.
And a great setup. Boulder double tap onto LASBRA, but goes into the dazzling offensive, stuns out Ducky. With a knockback from Nika, it should be enough. Whirlpool as well. Stu just a little late to the party. And that means Nika, LASBRA, pull not only a lot, but get out without having too much to worry about. You do lose beads on Nika, though. A pretty big loss, minute or 2.5 minutes now. To have to stress about whether or not they can find some extra pressure in the short lane. But he's gone straight down mid, he doesn't care.
And actually, speaking of Nika, the relic situation that he goes for, beads and then frenzy. And actually, before I talk about that anymore, it looks like the Hounds are going to be chasing out Mike and Coast. 3 here. Double taunt by Oathhh, gets the ult onto Coast. Coast still has ultimate available. And without anything other than the beads being used. That, I mean, he's just out, and now Mike is just going to stay kissed to him, so he still has that immunity from Mike's ultimate. There's not a lot of threat. Benny gets beads forced right now. Such a big advantage here for the Dragons now. 3 ults down on the Hound side. Duck's obviously coming up soon over in solo, but huge advantage for the Hounds.
You're all over
the Dragons.
You'd have to imagine maybe you could think about pulling the Fury. Instead, no, they back away. Honestly, the Ama, level 14, maybe nothing too crazy. Which, by the way, half of what's been going on right now is LASBRA's just become a solo laner. He's playing Amaterasu up against a Hercules. He's got the breastplate of determination. Nothing has changed for him outside of the fact that he's not in the jungle right now. But what I was going to say, Ama, maybe a big portion of burning down the objectives, much like NeilMah is
not
for
great
the
burn
Hounds. Here. Goes for the transform. And like you said, not a lot to work with, honestly.
Weird.
And so, Pyromancer left standing, and more importantly, Neil with no ult.
Neil going to be de-transforming soon. And actually, Oathhh is going to have to get his reset off here also. So now, big power play on the map for the Dragons. Big opening on Gold Fury, big opening on Pyro. Seems like they're leaning a little bit more towards Pyro. They have a lot of burn objectives. Frenzy, Bracer, and they pulled us Pyro.
Setup is there, Nika. Looping around one wall. Ducky's going to zone that out. LASBRA and Dardez, though, playing aggressive.
Wow.
And forward. Try to catch out a few, poke out enough. Ducky, relatively low. Kraken's going to be good for the damage. Now you need the chase. But Hercules, man, he just heals so much. Not enough to stay alive. But enough to cause some trouble. Dardez looking for some 3-man Taiko drums. Finds a little bit onto Stu, a little bit onto Oathhh, a little bit onto BennyQ. And each one left low, each one chased down. Oathhh able to slip through the cracks and get away alive. But that is more than you can say for 3 of the Hounds. And now the Dragons, who cares about the Pyro? Who cares about the Fury? You've got a 3-man advantage. Go for the fire.
And the Hounds are just not on the same page right now. A lot of these fights they're taking, there's either no advantage or they're on the back foot. And the Dragons, when they're on the defensive, they're able to get out of these fights. Hounds on the opposite side, unable to. Fire Giant down, Pyro down. Huge advantage for the Dragons here. And when you're trying to fight into this Aphrodite when she is sieging, it makes this anti-sieging very tedious, because before you do anything, you have to force out Afterwall.
Yeah, that's a tough ask. I mean, beads have been used. You've got them all up as of right now as well. And the Afro-World's still there. So I don't think Mike's going to be feeling a lot of pressure. I don't think anybody on the Dragons are feeling the pressure. 7-3. Let's go ahead and start to call that one 6,700, almost 7,000 gold.
And now I'm starting to understand why Twitch chat was 70% in the Dragons wagon, because they know exactly what they were expecting. And you know what? We were talking about it a little bit earlier on. 3-level lead for LASBRA right now, and he's 007. He's doing his best James Bond, and nothing it feels like that Oathhh can do is matching what this late game Ama is now bringing.
Yeah, I mean, and especially 3-level lead on a more late game god is going to make this just feel like an easier 1v1. And Charlie was talking on the desk. This is not a 1v1 that Ama wins. Unless she's 3 levels up and she's got 3 full items, then it's a 1v1 she is able to win. So with those XP leads, Dragons forcing down mid, 4 strong, LASBRA in the left lane. On to the Hounds to kind of make an answer here, because you can't poke down the Dragons comp because they have this Aphrodite, and they have better poke than you actually do.
And honestly, when you talk about the engage, it's actually something I mentioned last game. When you have an Afro, sometimes that engage is what you lose. And admittedly, maybe it's not the most beautiful, obvious engage, but you still have an Ama. You do still have what has been a great Raijin so far this game. Good stun from Benny over the wall. So a lot of openings. The Dragons position themselves left side Phoenix. They want to get aggressive. They still have a Runic Bomb from that Pyromancer. Transformation from Neil as they look to hold on for the defense. They've got plenty of clear options. They've got plenty of time on the Fire Giant. What is about now? Maybe that engage starts to come into question a little bit more. Ducky instead is the one who goes forward, goes for the knockup, looks for a push, can't quite find it. Now LASBRA jumps in, dazzling offensive, separates the fight, tries to find a little bit of aggression, but it's the Phoenix that's the main target. That's what the Dragons are trying to find. It's so low, but not quite gone. They still have pressure, and they have minions. They'll step forward. They'll pick up BennyQ. They will catch Ducky out just barely and need some more damage. Unable to find the last auto. But at the end of the day, you get the Phoenix, you find success, and you back away.
And you actually get the kill on the Benny now, too. So that clear by the Hounds is going to be a lot worse. Also, Wave somewhat close. Seems like they want to go for another siege. Very low, actually no ultimates available. Still somewhat good on relics. Still a great opportunity to siege this Phoenix.
Set up outside.
Frenzy.
There's going to be a frenzy. They want to burn, and they're burning Ducky right now. Dash forward from Dardez. You need the damage. Unable to find it. Instead,
big disarm.
Falls back towards the door. Stu locked up, forced to use the beads and the Aegis. Falls back. Phoenix taken down. NeilMah's low. No kills for the Dragons. Birds, though, exposed, stripped down, and now the base is wide open.
And it's clinical. Both this game and last game, this sieging has been nearly perfect by the Jade Dragons. Their ability to kind of... Actually, yeah, let's pause on this.
They're coming back in. Neil, poor Neil, you've been chosen, my friend. And not for a prize. Shut down, killed off, and sent back to base the old-fashioned way. 11,000 gold. Now Ducky, he's deep. The Dragons... I'm going to say maybe a little bit of tunnel vision here on who they want to lock down, but they are chasing this Hercules to the ends of the earth, and they are not going to let him go down without a fight. Has the healing, has some move speed, has Boulder. What can Ducky do? Stun's going to come out, use the Boulder for CC immunity. Body block's going to be there from the Dragons. It's a 4v1, and my god, the man is a raid boss. Finally taken down, Bullet Sponge through and through. But 2 kills onto the front line. Long enough on the second one that Neil respawns.
And actually, maybe it feels like a little bit of tunnel vision, because it took them so long. But killing Ducky, now this leaves open a Fire Giant in a 5v4, because they probably wanted to catch out literally anybody other than Neil. Because killing anybody other than Neil means that they have just an advantage for longer than 10 seconds, because supports are so far behind, they don't really have that same amount of respawn timer as other gods do. And they get Ducky. Ducky was dead for 40 seconds. So now they have a 5v4 here. Hounds opting to play the opposite side of the map. Playing for Gold Fury. It's good trading. Tier 1 tower also available for them. But I mean, the Dragons are just getting everything. And to my point earlier before the Dragons tried to make a huge play, actually did make a huge play, this sieging and just like the way they're able to play these sieges this game and last game has been flawless almost. They've not dropped really anyone. They're slowly cycling in and out who their frontliner is, who's trading poke, who's willing to play forward, who has relics available. And you compare this to just the Dragons yesterday, and these are mistakes that, I mean, mistakes that they were just making yesterday, and today they've already kind of fixed them up.
BennyQ alone in mid, does avoid the Kraken, costs him his beads. which I think Nika will make that trade every single day. There was still a tier 1 up in right until just now, taken down alongside the tier 2. Every tower for the Hounds stripped away. Right side Phoenix, the only real goal. Defensively, we've seen the Hounds try their best. Still lose the Phoenix. Mike steps in. LASBRA's going to lead the way. Dazzling offensive immediately goes for Stu. Catches him before he can get the air, and it's a clean opening kill for LASBRA, but now he's locked up in a bad spot. Mike, with a beautiful ult, buys him some time. Can't quite save his life, but keeps the team on their toes, healed up, and moving forward. Fountain going to help out the Hounds here as the Dragons look for the Titan. Good knock up from Ducky. Not going to be followed by much damage, though. And instead, it's Coast. Dardez firing from the back, getting damage spread around, mainly the front lines, and a pushback onto Coast from Ducky. Forces out the Aegis, forces him to play defensively. Kraken comes out, and the Dragons have the right target in mind. It is just a game to play for the Titan, and they take it down, go up 2-0.
And again, that's just great cycling of who's tanking and who's going in. Yes, maybe LASBRA goes a wee bit too deep, but securing the kill on the consistent damage that the Hounds have in Stu, that auto attacker, it just opens up the ability for you to just kind of walk in and just keep trading tanks because there's none of that consistent damage. And Dragons just great sieging in both this game and the last game.
And especially at the end, it feels like Coast, even to me, plays a little bit of a distraction factor, right? He's like, I'm going to come over here. Yeah, he gets pulled. He uses his Aegis. He's dealing some damage. He's the wrong guy to be looking at. You've got 2 mages that are barreling down your Titan and having the time of their life. Nika as well, we at least I had talked about it and was thinking about, oh man, these Krakens, they got to be huge. Most of the time it was just, I'm going to pull a relic with them, and that's a big win for him.
That's all I needed.
Then, of course, uses it on the end at the Titan, but that's just a little extra burst. It does feel like the double mage, even though the Ama didn't get active early on, the Hounds didn't really leverage that for their own advantage.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. That mid-game, actually both mid-games was either just all Dragons early game was just all Dragons or all Hounds, but that mid-game, Dragons just kind of took over, started taking the plays where they wanted to, fighting where they wanted to. On the opposite side, Hounds not really making any plays either this game or last game.
Well, unfortunately for the Hounds, that now means they're down by 2, so if they want third, they're going to have to reverse sweep, the hardest thing to do as of right now, especially with how the Dragons are playing. We'll see what they have to offer for us right after this quick break.
One, two, three, let's go.
While the Ama jungle may not have been the ideal selection for a pick over in the jungle for the Jade Dragons, this one did end up working out really well for them, Trelly. The early game CC, while the damage wasn't necessarily there for the Ama in these fights, being able to provide those silences, keeping the aura, damage, or movement speed for the team, and it ultimately really allowed the Jade Dragons to team fight and more than anything, just group up super well in the early game. And every single time we watch an early game team fight, there's 3, maybe 4 members of the Jade Dragons fighting 1 or 2 of the Eldritch Hounds.
Yeah, this was a pick that I thought would really get weaknesses going late game. Didn't get to that point. Didn't need to get to that point, right? The Jade Dragons were just sort of dominant throughout the entirety of this game after they realized, wait a second, we've got the objective pressure. We're going to get duo lane pressure. Anytime this Chernobog ever flies out of lane, I mean, Stuart would leave, to help his team fly away, and then Mike and Coast would just barrel down duo lane and say, okay, have fun, guys. Hopefully you don't lose that fight too, or we're going to start pushing down tier 2 tower, that sort of thing. The Jade Dragons just put on a masterclass of how to play with pressure and how to find pressure, and that is what they've been doing pretty consistently so far this set. Didn't seem like there was too much that the Eldritch Hounds were able to do to try and combat that, right? They found small amount of kills, as you can see, 3 to 7 at this point. Not enough, just not enough. Didn't seem like the tanks were tanky or the damage dealers did damage, and that's what happens when you get this far behind.
I really feel like Mike on this Aphrodite as well was causing a lot of problems for the Eldritch Hounds. Even though having that anti-heal there, Aphrodite's not entirely all about the healing. It is only single target and I guess also affecting Aphro herself, but it was the stuns from the kisses, the back-offs that constantly went through, and more than anything, probably the biggest thorn in Oathh's side, that ultimate. It felt like every single time that Oathh tried to get an ultimate off onto one target, instantly Mike jumps over, here's the kiss, here's the undying love, you're taking basically no damage. Oh, by the way, now you can deal a whole lot of extra damage to the enemy at that point. Just felt like the Hounds can never really find any kind of advantage in these fights. They get small picks here and there when they could find maybe a 3v1 in sort of a group up, or if the Dragons are overextending in one of the structures like the Phoenix or at the Titan. But this one was a case of the Jade Dragons found their early kills, and then they were able to do something with those early kills. Go to those Gold Furies, as you mentioned, get those Pyromancers, and really be able to finally push that early lead that they've been fighting for game after game. That was the struggle in their set yesterday, was they'd get the first few kills, or they'd get maybe the first 7 kills, but then nothing beyond there. So now seeing the Jade Dragons being able to translate those kills into objectives, being able to translate it into a lead, finally works out well for this team, and it looks good here in Game 2.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the Poseidon pick was really strong as well. Not just the fact that, the Krakens and things like that, but that Whirlpool got so much value that game. How many kills there did you see was just CC into Whirlpool into you can't run anymore, you can't driving strike, you can't Fafnir jump, you can't use your Agni dash. It's just the cripple was really annoying to try and deal with as well. So just a great composition there top to bottom from the Jade Dragons. Again, if you don't let them get late game, which didn't need to happen. The Jade Dragons recognized that they were able to play through pressure and not have to worry about what happens 30 plus minutes into the game. So the other towns have 2 options now. They can try and draft overwhelming early pressure, which I think would be the smarter call, but not necessarily the composition they lean on, or they can stall this game out, attempt to anyways, and draft a better late game comp. Looks like they're not going to try and dabble with the Amaterasu, so maybe not leaning towards that late game too hard.
Yeah, we'll see the Alma banned by the Hounds, along with Chernobog, so now not wanting to first pick that after a tough Game 2. I wonder what is Mike saying right now? He's pointing out one of his teammates while yelling at the Eldritch Hounds. So I would love to have known what Mike was just yelling out at the Hounds at that point, but let's see how the action on the Battleground takes part. Jade Dragons now up 2-0 in the set, 1 game away from taking that 3rd seed, or I guess holding their 3rd seed, and going to the playoffs, along with the Leviathans and the Ferrymen inside of their division. Eldritch Hounds will need to reverse sweep the Jade Dragons if they want to make it. in order to get towards that playoff point. Did see the Athena and the Oathhh were also bans there by the Jade Dragons. We'll have to see what the remainder of the draft kind of pops out here between these two squads. I mean, Jade Dragons have done a great job of getting their early kills. I think you're right to say for the Eldritch Hounds, either match that early pressure, match that early aggression in the Jade Dragons, or see if they can get something to hold out towards late game. Something that they can maybe stall towards a little bit more. But already seeing that the Amma and the Chernobog were bans by the Eldritch Hounds in that case, it seems that they're not necessarily pushing towards that late game.
No, they're playing reactive again, right? They're seeing what the Jade Dragons have done to beat them and trying to stop that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? After you're down 2-0, I think you do have to stop a bit of what the enemy team is doing towards you. But I want to see what the Eldritch Hounds are gonna, offer up as a strategy for their own victory, right? I mean, we've seen the Serqet. That's interesting enough, but didn't end up working out. So gonna have to go towards something else, whether that be Oathhh trying to hard carry or BennyQ going to one of his signature picks that he doesn't get to play so much anymore. Because we've already shown that even if Stuart's gonna get his hands on, the souls of the Chernobogs, the other towns are not showing that propensity to look towards duo lane. They are sort of leaving that duo lane alone, which, not necessarily a bad thing if you're able to play through Ducky or if you're able to play through BennyQ or Oathhh. Hasn't been the case so far. The other towns haven't been able to get anything rolling. So, looks like just trying to take away with the Jade Dragons or knock them off their rhythm is step one.
I mean, if we look back at even some of the previous matches and kind of what has been some teams' answers to the Jade Dragons, I mean, I look at one of their more recent ones against the Oni Warriors. What was the thing that the Oni Warriors were banning consistently every single game? Amaterasu on her. And then insert third depending on the mood. It was an Afro 1 point, there was an Oathhh in another game. So that third one is kind of up in the air, maybe for grabs. I think even the Hera received a ban during that set. But it's the Amma and the Anhur. You get the Amma, takes a comfortable pick away from Nika over the soul lane, or I guess now you have the flexibility of it for the jungle, though we're just going to consider this one still more of a soul lane ban, but acts that two-part. But then also taking away something from the Hunter VaporishCoast and trying to keep him down a bit. Now, the answer against Jade Dragons is also see if you can maybe get an Athena for yourself, because that seems to have been one of the kryptonite gods against the Dragons. They've gone against this Athena multiple times. We saw it yesterday, 2 games. The win against the Athena did not work great, so they had to make sure to take away game number 3. Worked the same way in the Oni set. They go against the Athena a couple of times. Doesn't work out. Finally, we're seeing the Jade Dragons ban that one away. If the Hounds can somehow manage to get Athena, and I'm not saying that Athena is the end-all, be-all, you pick this, you're going to beat the Dragons, but it has been a pick that's worked really well against this team, whether that be just because the Dragons have a hard time dealing with it, or just because of the nature of the god herself being able to simplify the game to such an easy degree.
I think that's the big difference maker, right? Athena just makes your late game so easy. You don't have to worry about, oh, we got to hit a Fafnir hammer here, or oh, we need to make sure that the CC connects. It's very difficult to miss dash taunt, and it's also very difficult to not get value from that ultimate. I mean, going across the map in an instant is just so easy. So, could be something that the Jade Dragons do not want to deal with, and they're not going to. So the other tries have to change up their strategy even more so. What will be the first pick? Remember, early on, Raijin got through. Wasn't the difference maker we were looking for. Ducky did fine on it, but wasn't enough to tilt the tides in the Eldritch Hounds' favor. So the Jade Dragons, I mean, I don't think they're in a spot where giving up Raijin is that big of a deal. I wouldn't hate an early Anhur grab or something from the Hounds just to try and throw, the Jade Dragons duo off their game. Not necessarily the Aphrodite. That's not something I'm caring too much about. Yeah, it's annoying, but I don't think that's something Neil wants to go towards. I would focus on hunters with pressure.
I think the other side of that coin is that if we see the Hounds go to Anhur, I want to see Stuart play aggressive.
Oh, of course.
I don't want to see the sit back and try and farm for 15-minute style of play that we've grown accustomed to seeing from Stu. If you're picking Anhur, that is the I'm jumping in level 2, level 3, we're going to have a fight, I'm going to burn your beads. Oh, by the way, Oathhh is sitting inside the jungle. He's coming over for next rotation. So if we do see Anhur picked up by the Hounds, and we actually won't, not yet at the very least, there'll be a Raijin Yamoja for final bans and an Aphrodite first pick. We'll have to see if NeilMah can maybe hold up to the same strength that Mike was able to find on this pick.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I was calling for grabbing the duo lane. I said the Anhur and not the Afro because I assumed Stu would be better on the Anhur than Neil would on the Afro, just because NeilMah and Aphrodite do not. Those are two picks that don't go together in my head. Doesn't mean he can't play it. I'm sure he can. But would have been easier just to grab the Anhur. They decide against it. They decide to take the Aphrodite. So I'll have to see if that's enough to put a thorn in the Jade Dragons side and, you know, try and deal with how this duo lane has been played so far. It's going to bring overwhelming safety, usually a bit of pressure because of the healing. But a pick that has been taken away a punch so far this set. That Ratatoskr makes its way through as well. That's a nasty top 2 for the Jade Dragons.
Well, you want to know why NeilMah and Aphrodite don't go together in your head?
They've never played.
Because it's never been played before by Neil. This is his first competitive Aphrodite game.
Wow.
Here on the essentially and potentially final game that the Hounds have of the regular phase and final game of 2023 for this team. They're going to put it on the NeilMah Aphrodite. Now, could still see some flexibility. We have seen Aphrodite go mid before. We've seen it go solo before this year as well. But has mostly found its home over in the support role. So we'll have to see most likely what NeilMah has been cooking up on this pick. And even when you look at it, like, you look at the beginning of the year, that first phase where it was like Afro Hell kind of all the time over in support role, NeilMah wasn't playing then. He was coaching at that time. So we didn't even get to see what maybe NeilMah could have done for the Hounds on picks like that one. Moving beyond there, though, the Anhur Ratatoskr for the Jade Dragons and now an Erlang Shen for the Eldritch Hounds. So where the Aphrodite may lack a little bit of initiation, now you've got some that tied up with the Erlang Shen.
They've got good pressure. I mean, Erlang Aphrodite early game is going to be one of the more difficult duos to try and get away from, right? Like if you have an Aphrodite and an Erlang attached to each other, Erlang has so much CC, he's going to be able to run you down, he has so much healing. That is a bit annoying to deal with. Throw a Hachiman in the mix, and that's going to be some good safety for Stuart at the very least. You got to try and survive a Ratatoskr gank, right? So getting cavalry charge, or mounted archery rather, is going to be a good get out of jail free card. But now you're looking at the pressure we've been talking about. You know, who's clearing the wave fastest? Sylvanus just got locked in, so we're going to give that pressure over to the Jade Dragons, almost certainly. You can pull all the buffs together. The AoE clears so easy. Anhur already, you know, comes out of the gate swing with his extra penetration built into the passive. Definitely a scary duo lane to try and deal with, especially with a Ratatoskr roaming around, who's already one of the best pressure junglers in the game. Scary top 3 there for the Jade Dragons. Not to say that the Eldritch Hounds also don't have the ability to get active. It's just they're already fighting down 2-0. Remember, they have to reverse sweep to even have a chance. I mean, well, literally, they have to have a chance. And they're down 0-2. So stopping momentum is already difficult. Into a comp like this becomes even more so.
Considering Ratatoskr has been in that top 3 ban every single time, the Hounds have had to make adjustments as the game goes on. So it does give 3 very high pressure picks now to the Jade Dragons. Second wave of bans. Zeus going to be taken off the table. We've seen a little bit of Zeus so far. I believe BennyQ have been a couple of the guys to have played that one. I think Paul, maybe? I'm gonna pull it up before I make a fool of myself. No, it's just been Benny and Paul. No Venenu this phase. It was Venenu last phase who went with a pick like that. And really, both times when those players have picked the Zeus up, it's looked great, but let's see what else gets drafted instead for the mid laner. BennyQ, so he did get a bit of a target there. Iset and Hera on the opposite side for the Hounds, and a Kukulkan pickup. A god that we don't see very often, and not necessarily one that I couldn't associate with Dardez, but when I think Kukulkan, I'm thinking more of like big man Tings. Like that was his bread and butter go-to. You know, even last year or year before that on the Camelot Kings. So with the composition currently as is for the Jade Dragons, how do you like the Kukulkan slotting in with the rest of this team?
I actually really like the Kukulkan here just because you have so much easy setup. The knock-up from Sylvanus, the knock-up from Rat are both going to be easy setup for your ultimate if you're trying to get that Spirit of the 9 wins. That's going to be a great place to look. Especially with the itemization. The second that we saw Book of Thoth and Breastplate come back into the meta, I've been waiting for the Cuckoo to start, peering his way through. Slow immunity helps. The buffs to Cuckoo have helped, right? I think that he's just in a decent spot. The issue is, can you connect that ultimate consistently? And with this much setup, probably can. But now,
do it again.
Let's wait and see if it gets locked in, because this is what I was talking about. I did call, I did call for the traditional BennyQ pick. Merlin and Atlas are both of those picks. In my mind, throw Ra in the mix as well. So
Yeah.
at the very least, we get the Merlin. I'll be honest, I was kind of wanting to see the Atlas
I
mid,
was too.
which is odd because I remember getting tired of seeing the Atlas mid at one point because of how much he played it. Just could be the Merlin though, not as cool, but you know, still something.
Unfortunately, we'll not see the Atlas. I'm kind of in agreement. I kind of wanted to see it.
Yep.
While he may not have the most impressive win rate on it, has had some pretty clutch plays on the God. Also, Atlas just does so much damage.
Yep.
With just his base numbers. Always feels like one of those Guardians you can build full tank and you're still out DPSing even some of the hardest carries. But it will be the Merlin-Poseidon combo. So I think for me, looking at these two comps immediately, you have the Sylvanus back. Ratatosker's got healing built into his kit with the Acorn. Morgan Le Fay with her ultimate. My immediate answer was something to deal with the healing. Somebody who could apply anti-heal really easily for this Hounds team. Felt like it was lacking pretty heavily with the first 3 picks. Soloing Poseidon, not really seeing too many Divine Ruins. I think Merlin may be a perfect selection of a god to easily drop a Divine Ruin and get that anti-heal to the Dragon's comp.
Yeah, Merlin just has so much AoE, very easy abilities to hit, no real skill shots, you know, it's just big AoE damage, so definitely a good Divine user, as well as just decent pressure in mid lane. You're going to need a little bit of safety up until you get like 3 items online. After that, not going to be the biggest deal trying to survive, you know, a Kukulkan at that point, assuming that the Morgan Le Fay goes solo, which probably a safe assumption given what we've seen from the solo lane recently. With that though, are we seeing too much pressure with the Merlin? I don't think so. I'm not imagining Oathhh sticks around mid lane. That's never really the call. Again, you sort of say, hey, you get some free farm, I'm going to look towards duo. For me, that's the biggest question mark. Is Oathhh going to be able to play through duo lane? It doesn't seem like you're going to be in solo too often. You probably go for first blue buff. If you get it, you live in solo lane the rest of the game. If you don't, you got to look elsewhere, because in these mage solo matchups, it's kind of just, you know, clear the wave, sustain, repeat. You have so much cooldown. You have so much lifesteal. Very annoying to try and gank that lane consistently. You got to get that first blue buff, right? That really does start a train. So if we're looking towards which jungler has the propensity to do that, Erlang and Rat both bring some early pressure. They both could be over there. So I'm paying attention to that second blue buff spawn, or I guess the first respawn of the blue buff, to see which jungler's in position first, which jungler gets there, which jungler sets up, and more importantly, which solo laner actually is winning the poke war. That's going to be important as well.
Yeah, because even though there is a ton of sustain over in solo, it's not nearly as much in the early game as compared to what it would be late game when you get 2-3 of those lifesteal items online. So who can kind of win out on that poke war? For the Eldritch Hounds, again, they've got to win this game, then they've got to win the next 2 after if they wanted to make it to playoffs. Jade Dragons 1 game away from doing so. Can they make it in 3? Let's find out with Gore and Inbound.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Trelly, as we jump into Game 3 and see what could be, potentially, the last showing of the Hounds for a while, unless they turn things around. It's Gort's Inbound. Of course, it's Doug. And I'm really interested in seeing this Twitch poll, because I know we've had 70s to 20s so far. 84 to 16. It is overwhelming in favor of the Dragons Inbound.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame them. The Dragons have looked fantastic.
Yeah, they played real good.
When you were talking about what you were excited to see, I thought you were going to say you're excited to see the Cuckoo, and I was like, yeah, me too.
I'm also
excited to see Cuckoo. Because he's gotten a huge amount of buffs over the last, I mean, this phase, 3 patches, 4 patches, he's seen a lot of buffs. Book has been buffed, Breastplate's been buffed. So fitting, like Charlie said, fitting to see this Cuckoo finally, you know, take a little step into the meta. I think this is like second game this phase we've seen a Cuckoo. So it's not much, or not too many times we do get to see this god play.
I feel like he's been hovered a lot
For
over
sure.
like the last 3 or 4
For sure.
weeks, and just nobody's been brave enough to lock him in consistently.
Dardez, though,
Dardez
he's
is
brave. He's very brave.
And he's making a stance, saying that wind noodles do still need to be represented in the battleground.
That's what you were going for.
I'm honest, excited for the ult potential, right? That's always what it comes in. It's a massive, big team fight, burst ultimate. Again, and I think SMITE, personally, I think it's always enjoyable when you just have that one ability that hit real hard. And so I'm going to keep my eyes on him around level 5, and from that point forward, Right now, though, he does still have to be careful because while he can fly, he does not necessarily move very quickly. Even with his move speed buff, it does not get him as far as you would like.
Yeah, and especially playing into an Erlang. No dash to get away from that root. So he's going to be very susceptible to that gank in mid. And we've seen Oathhh happily going to be blinking into mid, looking for Dardez. But I, too, also like seeing big mage ultimates, because it's always interesting to see how teams position
Just not
around
in solo
it.
lane, right? That's
Okay, yeah, that doesn't count. Those aren't big. Those are small, teeny
Yeah.
ultimates.
Well, they've got a Poseidon on the other side. Like, that can be... It can be potentially a lot.
If Ducky goes Typhons and Bancrofts and builds full damage, it'll be a big ult.
Okay.
Otherwise,
but
it's baby ult.
the minute he gets, like,
Breastplate. Yep.
and Genji,
Yep.
it will not be as big of an ult. Yeah, you're right. So it's going to be Dardez.
I'm excited to watch Dardez, yes, as we've covered. But the Rat Cuckoo combo, when Cuckoo ult gets sent through a fight, Rat has that big ultimate ability that can knock everyone up also, making it impossible to get away from the Cuckoo ult. And especially with a god like an Aphrodite, I mean, it is something you have to time very well.
Yeah.
The knock-up, you have to be able to immune it. Knock-ups are like the best form of CC into Aphrodite because you knock her up, then she's not able to move out of the way. She's forced into ulting in the air, and then she's still sitting where she is. And actually, a little trade, and you'll take a little bit of damage. Same with Coast, though.
Yeah, I was thinking there might have been more. Coast fell back, though. If he gets aggressive, might just kill off NeilMah because it is Coast, and that's what I've come to expect from him. The polls also, you know, we were talking about, or at least I kept mentioning it around Phoenix line a couple games ago. It is still important this early on to not get pulled.
Yes.
Especially against, I would say, maybe Anhur more than anybody else, considering how easily he can access his stun.
And Coast on her also, because if he sees an opening, Coast is jumping in.
Yeah, it might even be the sliver, the smallest opening that you could possibly imagine. He's going to try and go for it. Purple buff invade on left, blue buff invade on right. But LASBRA's successful. Ducky and Oathhh might be looking at a different story. They're going to go for Dardez. Dardez already half health. Instead, it's going to be
Ducky's
taken out.
dead.
LASBRA comes in, and Nika burns down Ducky, taken out for first blood by the Dragons, plus the blue buff invade and an unsuccessful purple invade. The Dragons still pulled pretty far ahead and have to feel good about that.
Yeah, maybe they don't get the invade on purple, but that's just pressure you're putting onto the enemy team. Now you're going to be able to get that shield camp. So maybe not a huge lead or a huge win on the duo side of the map for the Dragons, but still small lead. And when you're kind of dominating the other side of the map, getting that blue buff invade, getting the kill, just getting small wins on the other side of the map is all you need.
So far. Helps him hit level 5 first. Level 6 now, actually, for Nika. Which is a huge deal. 5 shortly thereafter for Ducky. So ult online, that's really the important part. But Nika going to be farming up pretty heavily and hard at that. Picks up the Pythags piece on his back, feels good with the farm, and gets us into this kind of position, right? Dragons already finding not just first blood, but the pressure that they typically want to look for. Coast, despite losing this shield buff, still wants to play aggressive. Has LASBRA on this side of the map. Ult for the Ratatosker is there. If they can bait them forward, he might be able to find it. Rat may have been just visible to Stu there on the edge. And it looks like LASBRA's going to go off into the distance. Look for something else. Knock up, though, from Mike. Going to be good. Damage follow-up, not quite there. LASBRA comes back around. Looks like he's channeling his back, not going to the sky. He's trying to figure out if he can get there. The sound cue right now is really what would play against him. And with NeilMah's healing, Stu's going to be fine.
Yeah, Neil still has that ultimate available too, so that's another thing you have to worry about.
And
He's
Stu
still
has
available on Stu. Stu still has ult. But it looked like the Dragons are just trying to kind of force a fight there. Maybe it's not something that they actually just outright dominate that 2v2, but just kind of, you know, baiting Stu and Neil, seeing if they're going to look to commit. Maybe Stu sends the ultimate in if the trade is happening a little bit better. But it's a good opening look by the Dragons. Already can see Laz is looking to be aggressive. And when you're playing this Rat, yes, you scale into the late game well enough. You're an assassin that can get to the back line. You have almost one-shot potential. But this early game is still very important, especially once you get this Acorn.
Well, the decision right now seems to be blue buff. Ducky, wisely, not doing too much about it. Mike even goes for a pull over the wall. I admire it, even if it, from our point of view, right, top down, we can see that it wasn't really that close.
We'll say it was close.
It was close
We'll give it to
enough,
him.
right? The threat being there. And again, I appreciate the effort more than anything. I'm also really interested in And this is, I think, the only god we haven't talked about up to this point. We've got 6 minutes in game. We've maybe touched on him a little bit. We'll have to hold that thought as Coast jumped in on CC's there. No beads, as you said, but the damage is good. The leap can't get him far enough away. And that one's going to go over towards Neil. Good lockdown from the Hounds to ensure a kill in the duo lane.
And who did you want to talk about? Merlin?
I was going to ask about Merlin, and specifically because when he got locked in, I could not help, and I feel bad about it because I locked in only on the fact that it's 6 games, 0% win rate. That is not usually that great. And when you've got Ratatoskers invading your speed buff successfully, it usually doesn't work out super well, although Oathhh able to return one for himself. Coast actually in trouble here. Goes for the up-down. Oh my god, I can't believe it. But he gets the impale. You need a little more damage. Aphrodite is perfect in that scenario. The ult from Mike opens things up, but Oathhh still goes down 1 for 1, despite Neil's efforts.
And that might be the first time I've seen Oathhh make a, or sorry, not Oathhh. First time I've seen Coast make a very bad misplay on this Anhur. Yeah. Usually when you see him, the jumps are aggressive, yes, but there's something he's looking for outside of just trying to kill someone. That right there, I think he's a little greedy. Instead of jumping away, keeping his life alive, and playing to just keep farming up, he trades his life, and now he's sitting almost half a level down to Stu on this Hachiman, and falling behind on Anhur is not something you want to do. This is a god you want to be ahead on.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that a couple games ago, right? Like, you're not playing him for this level 20. You're not playing him for the farm. You're playing him for right now where you can fight. The issue, and I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on this, because when I look at Hachi, he falls not quite in the same category as like a Heimdall or a Jingwei, but he's in that very adjacent conversation where he seems pretty safe, unlike where Anhur is right now. Taunted in by Oathhh. Knockup. Huge gonna be knock great. 3-man knockup from Mike, and that might be the turnaround the Dragons need. Now aggression is on their side. NeilMah is all alone, and you just need a couple more autos. One more shot from Coast, and the kill is good. Mike turns that fight around.
And if Mike hits maybe one less person, we're talking about Oathhh maybe actually dying before the ult actually goes off. Fortunately, Mike there to get the 3-man ult disrupts the fight there that the Hounds are kind of looking for. And even though they're playing into this Anhur is behind. I like that they're confident enough to still take fights on that side of the map. I think the downside, actually, Laz in the air. Maybe let's look at this first.
Who's he going for? Maybe it's just red buff steal. He's got BennyQ in front of him alongside it. Gets the steal. I swear he just stole that one away, and yes, he did. So a good dash and a good successful invade. Now he has to get out of there. That's the hard part. Whirlpool, a little late pin, good. And despite his best efforts, no blink means no life here for LASBRA.
LASBRA, a little deep. I mean, playing aggressive, I like that. Maybe a little too aggressive right there.
Teensy bit.
Ulting to the red buff. Yes, you secure it, but you don't have the mid pressure really. You don't have the solo pressure, so you're just going to get kind of chased out. And Oathhh still had that blink available to actually catch you out. But seeing how these mid laners are kind of playing differently so far into this game, we've seen Benny not really rotate out of mid. He's kind of just really happy with farming, trying to get to that late game. And already we've seen Dardez rotate to one fight in duo, one fight in solo, and then one fight at his own speed buff where Oathhh is there for some reason, killing Coast. But he's happily rotating everywhere.
LASBRA, I think, showcasing the unfortunate scenarios of a Kraken and of a Poseidon, which is sometimes you just walk a little faster than that thing can come out, and you get out of there. So that is an ult used. 2 ults technically down on the Hounds. Mid camps is all they grab. Gold Fury pulled up by the Dragons. You just called it. Stuart back. BennyQ, Neil see this. Dragons have the better ult, though. And they're going to pick that one up, not for lack of trying from NeilMah and BennyQ. Now the Dragons pull their lead to just over 1,000. Not anywhere near as much as I thought it was going to be.
No, not really that big of a lead so far. Stu kind of has that nice little lead over in duo. Actually had, I guess. He's now down a level, even though Coast has been taken down 2 times.
Coast with his up-downs have maybe not found him the best success. But the farm afterward, it's been going his way. You have that lead in jungle, which maybe feels a little more applicable. LASBRA is going to try to change that. Goes in, stuns Ducky. And all they need is a few more hits. Oh, a little wide from Nika. Good juke shoes from Ducky.
Laz up.
Now LASBRA, knock up, damage is good. Maybe a little overkill, but at that point you got what you needed. And that is Ducky in the dirt for a few more minutes. Blue buff invade. Looks like Benny and Neil rotating in. And maybe not a fight they want to take. Knock up, only onto one from Mike. Benny goes forward, but now LASBRA is going to lead the way for his team. Has to be careful here, low health, but jukes out some abilities. BennyQ just off
Aegis.
the mark. Now the Aegis buys some time. He wants the kill, he wants the tower. He just wants safety. Mike moves forward, not on his own volition, looking for a pull, but they just need some damage. Tornado plus Nika get the job done. Oathhh comes in, taunt, forces the beads. There's going to be an great juke from Oathhh to dodge it out from Dardez, but you can't quite chase him. It's Benny over the wall who ends up finding Nika, and with Mike, no one left to support him. Can't quite turn around to kill. And I believe we go 1 for 1, maybe 2 for 1 if you extend it to include Ducky.
Yeah, I mean, we see both of these teams just playing super deep into the enemy's jungle.
Real deep.
And they're getting punished for it. It's not like they're getting massive wins and not trading anything out. There, you're trading out the enemy's support for your own solo laner, which is a 4-level difference. And when you have the lead, that's never a trade you want to make. Actually, if you have a lead or if you're even behind, I guess a 4-level lead trade is never really that worth. And especially when your solo laner that gets taken down was 3-0 prior to that death.
And had a hefty lead, too. I mean, that kill, it's nice, at least for Nika. Ducky is not in the neighborhood when that happens to help balance things out. So Nika maintains a still pretty solid lead, but it is dangerous. I cannot believe, and maybe this is just the pace of the game, that was the first beacon that we just saw captured by the Hounds.
That is weird.
That it feels like we should be on 2 or 3 at this point, right? Like that was so fast.
With how deep everyone's playing, we're thinking it's like 20 minutes into the game, and they're just looking for a little advantage for Fire Giant.
Everybody still has their towers. There's like nothing crazy going on the map, actually. It's just these guys' play style.
And so far benefited a very small lead for the Dragons. And when you see how both of these teams scale, I think you kind of look at how they want to play these fights. These are both team fight-oriented fights, both the more meta picks or meta comps that we've seen recently. We have double mages and solo lane, both playing for poke. Some CC. You have junglers that are going to be more all-in junglers. Mages are just scaling for that late game. Hunters, both. I mean, even if Anhur's not a scaling god, Hunters just scale. That's what they do. Anhur might not scale that well. And then both supports just want to play with their backline. So this is going to be probably really long fights with a lot of poke, a lot of healing, a lot of sustain. And it's kind of whoever gets that first kill is going to be seeing a lot of advantages around these Gold Furies, these Pyros, which are spawning any second now.
Mike has the potential to be, you know, the T-ball coach, right? He's just like, hey guys, here's the ball. Just hit it out of the park. All he has to do is hit a pull, and whoever he grabs, that's the ball. That's all you got to do.
They got to swing, though.
They got to swing. That's been the... Actually, I was going to say that's been the issue. The issue hasn't really been the swinging. The issue has been a little bit of the setup. Some of the pulls... you can't hit them all. That's just impossible.
Yes.
But if you hope hard enough as a Dragons fan out there, and that 80-some-odd%, then you're going to see one and see them relatively often. That's going to be an issue around the siege as well for the Hounds to deal with. NeilMah has to play carefully. LASBRA, no, not the red buff, not your life. He backs away. But he's not so far back that I think it's going to be fine. Pyromancer pulled half health already, thanks to the Dragons. Kraken used on the Mike. Now you've got the almost, but not quite, able to clip from Dardez. LASBRA's behind all 5 of the Hounds. You don't quite have Coast. It's a 4v5 for the Dragons. I don't think LASBRA is looking for the fight, but if it shifts over to mid, Coast is a little bit closer. He's coming in, and it might take him the long way, but he is going to get there. It's just, can they keep the Hounds engaged long enough, and how many wards did you walk over to get here? They spotted LASBRA. Coast seems to think the fight's fizzled out. And so despite, pull on a Pyro, a lot of numbers, Dragons, actually, they're just going to step right back up and try it again.
And in these fights, we see a lot of punches getting thrown, a lot of abilities getting thrown out. They're just not hitting really hard, but Oathhh gets blinked on, beats forced, getting chased down by Nika. Laz also going into the air. Oathhh jukes out the one, but here comes LASBRA, takes him down.
Clean kill. And it's exactly what you need. LASBRA has been looking to use that ult. Not much more to it. This is the big question, though. You've got 20 seconds without Oathhh, maybe without Ducky if he's not careful. Can you pull that Pyromancer now and feel confident with the numbers advantage?
as soon as Dardez ult is back up, I think you're confident in pulling it, but still not up for a little bit. Probably want to play for that cooldown, but you do have that pick onto Oathhh that you can play around. And you really don't want to rotate your ADCs at this point, unless you're kind of matching the enemy ADC. You kind of want Oathhh to just keep farming up over there. But Gold Fury's up, Pyro's up, possible trading on the map available for both teams. And Dragon's definitely in a more comfortable spot, but Hounds aren't too far behind.
No, nothing that spiraled so out of control that you're sitting there and maybe even stressing. But you are maybe getting just a teensy bit more worried in the sense that these games are taking the same turns that the games up to this point have taken, right? If you're the Hounds, you know, your early games looked really good. Your mid game has left us wondering where a lot of that pressure has gone. Haven't gotten to see too much. BennyQ got a good kill earlier, but you know, the Merlin objective burn really comes to my mind. I'm going to go back to a point I was going to ask you about earlier, which is like Hachi feels pretty safe. Anhur feels like he wants the 1v1, but it just does feel kind of like Coast won't be able to find that fight. He won't find what he's looking for over there the way he normally does.
Yeah, I think unless Hachiman relics get forced earlier or ultimate gets forced on the Hachiman. There's also decent setup, I guess, into a gank, forcing ultimate out of that Hachiman and then allowing your rat to kind of chase down. But as you said, that 1v1 potential, very, very low. I mean, even comparing it to that Soul matchup where Soul's a very safe character for the most part, but even Anhur has exploitable 1v1s versus her if he just forces out that to separate. Hachiman just has so much safety in the dash and then the ultimate. And then the relics. So there's a lot of things you have to get through if you're going to kill the Hachiman.
Really, and this is sometimes like dynamic, you know, when admins step into the room, but very interested that Oathhh took the headset off. Just because, you know, when you sat in there, we've used those. It's pretty difficult to hear somebody if they're trying to talk to you. So it feels like Oathhh, like, still able to hear everybody.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up from the Dragon, so I have to imagine they're feeling pretty confident now from the admins. But just an interesting dynamic from Oathhh, wondering maybe he just needed to give his ears a little break from the incessant yapping of NeilMah.
Wow, that's what you're going with.
Yeah.
Neil be yapping a little bit too much. Oh,
he was talking a lot during that break, man. I love Neil, though. He's so...
But you hate that he yaps.
No, I actually love that he yaps. It makes him such a good person to interview. He's so fun to talk to.
He is great. We could gush about Neil for so long.
Yeah, you know what? Let's just gush about Neil for the rest of the game. Dragons are winning. But Neil's just got such luscious locks. He's real nice. That's probably the Canadian.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to move away from the bit because we went in too far. Gold Fury's up, Pyro's up, and the Fire Giant standing there. This time last game, Dragons felt confident enough with the numbers advantage in the fight to go for a fire. Where is the pressure right now, right? Like, where can you find some of that aggression? Are you looking for anything that big right now? Or can you even think about the Fury, or do you got too much work to do on the board before you can really find those objectives?
If I'm the Dragons, I'm pretty confident going either Gold or Pyro. Just having the best secure on the map, and it's not close. Kuku ult is the best secure. You can also combo it with his 1, and it can come out to be about 2,500 burst. But Hound's doing it first, pulling this Pyro, burning it a little bit. Mike with the 4-man ultimate.
Oh,
they disengage from Pyro.
And it forces, like you said, the disengage from the Pyro and a fallback from the Hounds. I thought there was going to be more, and maybe there still is. LASBRA loops around the tier 1 in mid, going up on the red buff. Sees Oathhh. Oathhh sees LASBRA. They get the tier 1 in mid, the Dragons that is, and find themselves a small amount of gold. Now that Pyromancer, coveted by the Hounds, tried to pull. It's going to be picked up. Coast leading the way for his team. They've got all 5, and just as easily as it could be, Dardez throws 1. Servant of the 9 wins downtown, and it is all secure all day, and the Dragons with the second neutral jungle boss of the game.
And something that's throwing me a little bit off with Neil right now is it's level 13 and he only has 1 relic in hand, and that relic is med, which is not upgraded. A lot of the times you see the med, and not even just like 1 or 2 players, it is most players when they get that med, they upgrade it as soon as they finish their Thebes. Like Thebes is finished, farm for 800 gold, immediately back again, upgrade that med. Med tier 1 is not great value. Med tier 3, probably the best value you can get from a relic.
Oni Fury, simple, clean. Dragons pick that one up, no problem. And what was a pretty even, close game that we were just talking about, well, now suddenly it's 5,000 gold separating these two squads. Dragons with a massive lead, only 2 kills ahead. But 18 minutes in, inbound, suddenly It's not, oh, can they go for a Pyro? Can they go for the Fury? The answer to both is yes, and now it's can they look at this Fire Giant or try to bait in the Hounds? And like you said, Neil actually does now back, spins, I don't know how much he had to have in hand.
A lot.
To get a tier 2, a fully upgraded med, and a fully upgraded bracer. Or sorry, just tier 2
Just
bracer.
tier 2. Still is more
Okay,
gold, though.
it's still way too much gold to just be walking around with. But now he finally has that. Do you like the tier 2 bracer? Or do you think that's another one that he needs to farm up and get going as quick as possible?
It's definitely the one you want to get out of base and you want to upgrade as quick as you can. Unfortunately, the tier 2 breastplate also into breastplate is something you want to get quickly also. So around that 1,700 gold mark, once Neil gets to that, you want to see him back quickly, upgrade both of those. Maybe a little bit more than that to get some wards also. Because we've seen the Dragons pretty comfortable pulling fires, pulling pyros. They got this secure. They actually have a 5-man grouping here. And the Hounds are not completely ready for this.
NeilMah and BennyQ will spot it out. Ducky's on the side. Should be able to see them. LASBRA forced up into the sky. Is he going to go
It's
for
a
the knockup?
50-50.
Is he falling back? 50-50. There's the ult from Dardez. And Fire Giant goes to the Dragons. Now, you just have to escape with it. LASBRA's been fine. It seems like some ults used to disengage.
Pull.
Mike even gets a pull onto Neil, and Neil might be the sacrificial lamb here. Jump forward from Nika. Damage is good,
The chase.
and they take care of the support. Now, suddenly, the fight is more interesting. The healing from Mike keeps LASBRA in this. Ults have already been used from the Dragons, and that close gap is not as easy as it once was. Seems like they recognize their capabilities. Don't chase too deep. Strip the jungle, keep the fire, maybe get aggressive in mid.
And Dragons comfortable even on that Fire Giant with LASBRA getting poked out before the fight really even starts. They just have such great secure. Poly Kuku with that ultimate, very safe, secure. Now they have a 5v4 on this middle tier too.
Man, it's so dangerous with the Kukulkan as well, right? Because it's not just, hey, can he kill a Fire Giant? Because we know, yes. But
Yes,
also,
he can.
man, if you happen to just be in the line of fire that he goes for, goodbye to half and or more of your health bar. Same thing that Coast is saying right now. Hachi. Shot's great from Stuart. He's going to pick up some chests to try and balance out some of this gold lead. 7,000 to the Dragons. No Fury, no Primal. Fire on all 5. And it looks like left lane, specifically the tier 1 that's still standing, is their next target.
And a lot of gold in hand for the Dragons, about 1,500 gold for 3 of them. Starters across the board, ready to be finished. Looking like they're going to play this a little bit slower, and they actually have a good feeling because of how many people cross the wards that Hound's actually looking for something in left lane as LASBRA pushes down right.
Now their reset maybe costing them a little bit, and they're going to pick up power spikes, as you mentioned. But it is only a tier 1. I was thinking maybe the Hounds push for a little more. Nika and Dardez stay around. Dardez, one of those players that has a lot of gold in hand, so this back as well going to be a pretty massive power spike. Level 20 for him and for Coast. So that is upgraded starters that are coming online. And
500.
Coast, yeah, look, at this point, when you're hitting that hard, you take any objective that stands in your way.
500. Not a crit, just his 1, just the damage in his kit. And he's only 5 items. Five items done. He still has a 6th item to go. Curious if we're going to see that oboe. We saw it buffed last patch. We've not really seen it at all. But I think in builds like this, an oboe makes a lot of sense.
It was something Mifflin actually touched on yesterday while we were casting, watching the Dragons as well, was that at the time there wasn't a lot of AoE damage for the Dragons. This time they have some AoE damage. They're maybe not as worried about it when you have a Kukulkan Nika. But the oboe came up in that conversation. Do you like that as a replacement for the gooseberries?
Yeah, I think oboe's really good. As you said, the AoE damage that oboe provides is pretty crazy. But I also think having that crit, even if it's every 4 or 5 crits with a Demon Blade, it still feels very good. And that chance to just kind of one-shot someone off of like some CC, that extra damage you get, that DPS, the extra also lifesteal you get when you're critting, makes it feel a lot better too. So far, Dragons kind of getting whatever they want, not getting really contested too much.
I want to ask you, though, because you mentioned the Demon Blade. We do have a crit item online for Stu. I guess a couple, right, technically.
Yeah.
But the Deathbringer stands out a little more to me. Do you prefer, I guess, kind of dipping your toes in the crit the way Stu has, or just like a single Demon Blade picked up for Coast towards the end? Like, which one do you think has a better advantage in like some of the fights?
I think it's dependent kind of on the kind of style you want. I think if you need consistent crits to be able to kill like a frontliner, I really think Stu's build in the meta feels better a lot of the times, because if Nika walks too far forward and Stu can get 1, 2, maybe 3 auto attacks onto
good
him,
point.
Nika's dying. And if you look at the other side, Coast will shred, absolutely shred Neil. But the rest of him, the damage isn't as high because he's not getting that consistent crit. No oboe, no crit. He's going for a, I'm going to say Titan's Bane. There's potential for Crusher, but I'm going to say Titan's Bane.
Yeah, just another pickup. Which if you're looking for power, and I guess in this case, tower killer, tank killer, whatever you want to call the build, that's what Coast is going to have lined up for him. They're grouping up on left. 2 Phoenixes exposed. 1 tower left standing for the Hounds. Mid and right, Phoenix are the ones that are open. Left side is where the Titans are, and it's where the Tier 2 is left standing for the Hounds. Tier 1s were knocked down. Good thing from the Hounds specifically, because prior to just now, the Dragons had every single one of their towers. Right now they have 11,000 gold. Should be pretty simple to take care of the Order Titan. And the last time we saw them, they pressured out left. They were able to get the Phoenix and then just leave, let the Titan do the rest of the work. Tier 2 to knock down. Defense for the Hounds. They're mounting it at the Tier 2. Maybe we'll get to see what it looks like before I can ask whether or not you think this is a great idea. It seems like they're timid. How do you like the Hounds holding up here?
I think, I mean, it's already down to now 500 health. Poly Cuckoo, you're going to have to give this up, but try to delay them as much as you can.
Create some space to the best of your ability. Oh my god, Neil has to play careful. Sent back, Kraken good, and it gets a lot of damage on the Coast, who's already half. There's going to be an ult. A great shot from Dardez. He kills one and takes Ducky down to half, and now the engage for the Dragons is there. The leap forward. They keep so many low health bars. They've got the Titan. They're low themselves.
No fire.
Gonna have to do the healing and carry them through this. And like you said, no fire, but it does not stop them. Phoenix still goes down, opened up by Dardez.
And actually, Laz, off that ultimate, dashes in onto Stu, and the fail not that, well, or at least, wait, actually, am I lost? Maybe I'm lost. Maybe it was, okay, never mind. Laz was the one that got crit. I thought it was Laz that crit Stu because of fail not, but fail not's not on his team. Misread the situation. Either way, huge siege by the Dragons. Great engage, forcing out relics, forcing out stuff, and then Laz.
And Dardez deleting a guy helps a lot.
Exactly, Laz and Dardez on the same page. Very clean play by them.
Man. I was going to say the downside is, well, you just use your ult. You don't have it for the Fire Giant.
Oh, yeah.
That diamond's already almost complete. All they need is a little bit of time as it comes up right now. So if you need the secure, it's waiting for you. What we can see, though, Oathhh and the rest of the Hounds, nowhere near this FG. Looked like we might have gotten Ducky and Stu looking for the Tier 2 and left. They push up the minions. That's going to give them a lot of room.
And I think that's like the big bright point of it. Yes, they're not getting the Tier 2, but pushing that wave up that far, it now gives you about a minute before that wave actually crashes down. So it's just time that you can at least try to sort of buy, especially when you have such good clear with this Merlin. It's really hard to get that wave in.
Time to defend. That's the important part. And like you said with Merlin, you know, we talk about it a lot when he is picked in. The defense is his bread and butter. Unfortunately, he is 0-6 so far this phase. We'll see if Benny is able to change that and change history for him. Nika has to play careful. Crits can be good. Another Kraken directly onto Coast.
A lot of damage.
Beautiful damage from the Hounds. But
Dardez.
undone once Mike gets his hand on the ball. Dardez has that ult. That's the threat. Honestly, this Tornado's maybe doing a little bit more than they'd like as well. Neil's taking a half health. The healing should still be there, though.
And Dardez seems confident on this Cuckoo. He's walking up, getting ones off, looking for the poly, and the tornado placement is making it so the Hounds can't really play to the side they want.
Not only that, it feels like they're having trouble disengaging the way they want. And LASBRA up in the air. Who is the chosen sacrifice? It's going to be a knock-up onto 2. No follow-up from Dardez, so it's just going to open up the Phoenix. LASBRA gets out, and Dardez just a little shy from finding the damage they want. Stu makes it back to Fountain, heals back up to full. Right side Phoenix down, left side Fire Minions pouring in. Mid defense for the Hounds is where they set up. Dragons, once again, playing a little further back, playing it safe, trying to heal up before they re-siege.
Merlin range, very obnoxious, something you have to play around, especially when you're trying to get the sustain from Sylvanus. Not one of the best healers in the game in terms of how much he's actually able to heal. It's mostly like in-combat healing with the protections from that too. But he does heal enough if you give him enough time. and that's kind of what the Dragons are waiting for this time. Letting left wave go down, Nika pushing out right wave, trying to get those fire minions collapsing on the outside. Dragons have a nice little setup here, 16,000 gold, and confident spot for them to be in. Dardez ult coming back up again soon too. Always one-shot potential there.
They're going to pull someone with him. Kraken used on Nika. Nika doesn't take too much damage from it. Goes for the ult for ult trade. Doesn't quite find the damage back. Dardez with a shot connects on Stu. Forces out Beats, forces out Aegis. Does not get the kill. So no big openings for the Dragons just yet. LASBRA deep in, blink, stun, damage. Good, but not quite enough, and he can't make it out. The
Phoenix.
dart not far enough away. Oathh kills his opponent. But they still lose the mid Phoenix. Left is about to come back up. Fire Giant still a minute. Without LASBRA, the Dragons maybe now surging forward to the Hounds. Leaving the base too far. They're getting aggressive. They're chasing them down. But now, with a Whirlpool, not going to be able to catch up.
And the sprint just to get that disengage by the Hounds. They were chasing out a little bit, but then they realized maybe we chased a bit too far as the Dragons turned and looked to take the fight. But that entire time, Stu takes the time to push up left wave, get that Phoenix back alive. Dragons going for the Gold Fury. Not a ton of time left on this fire, minute, but with that minute, with how weak this left Phoenix is, with that fire wave and left, there was potential there. Instead of going for that though, they played a little more safe, get that purple buff, reset, start grouping around right, maybe looking for Pyro, but already there, the Hounds maybe setting something up.
An interesting spot to be in. You've got Kraken, you've got Merlin. In theory, you could burn and secure a Fire Giant if it was like spawning literally right now.
Yeah.
Faster than the Dragons could. But the Dragons have, 16,000 gold on you and have knocked down your base to about the weakest that it can possibly be. So if you're setting up for that, A, you got to wait a minute, and B, kind of got to pray for the best.
And you got to secure it over a Cuckoo ult, which is a task in itself.
Plus, as we mentioned, what's that? Man, maybe it was last game, maybe it's this game, but Poseidon not going full damage. So the Kraken's maybe nowhere near, actually, not maybe. They're just nowhere near what a Dardez Servant of the Nine Winds will do. So where do the Hounds, if you're setting up a defense here, right? Dragons have control of the map, they have control of the gold. Where is your best bet at stopping the Dragons?
I think if you look at how your comp wants to play and how it's had played so far, I think playing under Titan is going to be a slightly safer option. Yes, they're going to have EFG, but your base is already broken. Right, Phoenix
you're
is down.
not saving a Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. You're just defending the Titan. And with how easy you actually clear Merlin, Poseidon, you have really good clear options. Clearing waves as they come in is a slightly better option than hoping the Dragons overextend. But playing up like this, the chase potential the Dragons have, the one-shot potential through the jungle with that Cuckoo ult, it's a lot harder to tell where Spirit of the Nine Winds? Is it Serpent or Spirit?
It's Spirit.
Spirit of the
Did
Nine
I say
Winds?
Serpent earlier?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was wrong if I did. It's a Spirit. And it's going to help out right here. Get an
Stu.
EFG. That one was a little close too. As well, eats the full brunt of that. Has his beads, has his Aegis. Can't use either. Killed off by LASBRA, who jumps forward, finds himself 2. 3 already gone on the Hounds. It's BennyQ and Oathhh left to defend. The Hounds step up too far. The Dragons call their bluff, call their bet. Get a triple for the jungle. 3-0 this set and secure themselves the 3rd seed. They're going to playoffs.
And Dragons looking completely different this set than they did yesterday. Great, well, not great early game, great mid game, great late game, and great siegings to end. They take this game 3-0. And when you're going into playoffs, this is your last game until playoffs, those top 6, you want to get that momentum going. That's what you need. You need momentum carrying into playoffs. And then on the other side of things, Hounds now dropping down to that bottom 2, gonna have to go through the play-ins in January just to completely, like this decided a lot for both of these teams.
It's months now, right? After today, before we see the Hounds. Only a couple of weeks before we see the Dragons again. And the biggest opener for them, right? A conversation that we've kind of been having, but Hounds and Gladiators now decided are going to have to wait for SEC squads to beat, which we have seen in the past is not the most convenient spot to be in. Even these last couple of years, that's been dangerous territory. As well as 2 more opponents. Playoffs, 6 teams. The Dragons just now earned their spot as the last ones to go. And the question is going to be, who are the top 4 that make it straight to Worlds, and who are the other 2 that have to join the Hounds and the Gladiators? That's going to be in just a couple weeks. trying to remember the dates. It's a week after the 9th, which +7 means it's the 16th, starting on that Thursday. And so you're going to want to make sure you tune in there. But third seed right now, if you're a Dragons fan or you just voted for them, you can celebrate while they do with their 3-0. The desk will break down the game.
That's right, the Dragons will sweep out 3-0 to clutch their third seed and make it to the playoffs in just a couple of weeks. And in this game, the Kukulkan, I got to give shout-outs to Dardez. We haven't seen this pick very much. It's not one that's ever really been a meta-style selection, but he made it work really well. A couple of big ultimates. One over on the Siege on the left side lane, managed to pick up 1 kill while sieging the tier 2 tower, helped open the door towards Phoenix. And then, unfortunate for Stu, walked into the one that secured the Fire Giant, and that may have just been the beginning of the end of that fight, because when your carry's at a quarter HP, now trying to run from the rest of the team, makes it a little bit harder for the Hounds to fight back into objectives.
Yep, at that point, it's, you got to make a play. Your base is broken, EFG's going down, you just step forward and you try and make a play happen. But you're right, having number one, an easy confirm tool every time you go for Fire Giant, was a big difference maker there. You just know the Eldritch Hounds want to step up, like, well, Dardez has ult. Should we even fight? Should we just try to look for the fight after the fact because we can't go in for a steal? And also, just very good survivability. Dardez was extremely slippery pretty much the entirety of this game. I liked the idea of taking the Aphrodite away. Just didn't see enough from it here from the Hounds, and I think that's something that you would expect when it's, a Jade Dragons pick that the Eldritch Hounds have sort of swiped, as opposed to a Hounds pick that they go for themselves. So that's what it looked like to me, just the Hounds trying to knock the Jade Dragons off their rhythm. And just we're not able to find that with the Aphrodite pick, or up against this Cuckoo and things like that. Also, if we're talking about the different style of picks, gotta shout out this Sylvanus as well, man. Loved seeing Mike on this Sylvanus. The pulls were on point, the ults were on point, the healing. I'm sure we're gonna see how much it was. We know the first time we saw it, ridiculous amount of healing, and I assume it would be the same style here.
Yeah, somewhere around, I think it was 11k in game 1 for Mike on the Sylvanus, so healing-wise. Didn't get the most damage out there, but healing, kind of the big factor there. And it's been a pick that Mike has gone to time and time again, really ever since the release of this guy, and ever since Mike's been playing support competitively. Matter of fact, I'm just going to give a shout out. SMITE just put a recent video out with some of the best moments from every World Championships. And spoiler alert, Mike's is actually in there with the Sylvanus steal at Fire Giant with that first ability on the Sylvanus. Yeah, he did 11k in game 1, 11k in game 3 on the God. So 22,000 healing in the 2 games for Mike on the Sylvanus. A 0-0-7 game for him. 3-0 for Dardez. And I also got to give a shout out to Nika and LASBRA over on the right-hand side, really controlling that solo lane end of the map. Nika with a 4-1 on the Morgan Le Fay. Look strong here for the Jade Dragons, able to find themselves a 3-0 and really maybe give themselves that little bit of extra of a confidence boost moving in towards that playoffs.
Yeah, cemented themselves. No question asked about that 3rd seed over the 4th seed there. Unfortunately for the Hounds, just were not able to get anything going. But if you are a Hounds fan, they've got plenty of time to go back to the drawing board and sort of work out how they want to continue playing on this new squad. Whereas the Jade Dragons, we'll see them in just a little bit.
Yeah, great games from Mike on the Sylvanus. Love what we were seeing out of him in the matchup today and over the course of the phase. And we get a chance to talk to Mike one more time before the playoffs because he's standing by for our post-game interview.
That's right. I've got Mike here. And Mike, very recently now, you've secured 3rd spot. You're going to playoffs. How's it feel?
Good. We've had a rough couple last weeks, I think, struggling with some identity of how we really want to play as a team. So in a weird way, it's kind of a good position to be in, have a little bit of pressure on us, put our backs against the wall, see how we react to that, especially in a time where I think we've been doing pretty poorly. So yeah, I'm proud of everyone and how they played today.
I know, and this is a conversation we're going to have a lot more in a couple of weeks, but playoffs, relatively big, right? 6 teams, it's going to be doubling them. Top 4 get to go to Worlds. And then there's a seeding choice of opponent at Worlds things. But right now, just looking at the other 6 and your position, how does it feel, I think, that event kind of looming on the horizon?
I'm always excited. I love best of 5 playoff SMITE's what I live for. I love it. So I'm really excited to get into that. I believe we play the Raven should be our opening matchup. It's definitely a team that I'm very comfortable against. We're all familiar, me and Las especially are familiar with all the guys on that team. So it should be exciting, of course, going against Steve in the playoffs. What a treat that is. So it'll be fun.
I'm sure everybody's excited to watch it. I guess, more short term, I know, you and Aurora will continue having your podcast going. And so this one's just for me, curiosity. When you compete so much, but you also are both SMITE encyclopedias is the way I would determine it. What kind of things do you think you're going to be talking about to just promo your podcast?
Honestly, I'm not sure. Aurora and I, we get in these modes where like we'll send each other like 5 ideas and we'll be like, oh yeah, those all sound good. And then we get the day of and we're like, so what are we doing again? Like you said, I mean, we'll always have something to talk about. We've been playing for so long, so it's whatever idea pops up into our head. But yeah, we've been trying to get chat more involved. So if you guys are around after this next set, twitch.tv/Aurora the Chunk, you should be there anyways. To be fair, you should be there.
Just constantly watching Aurora's Twitch channel. Whether it's online or not, you should always be there. If you don't catch it there, you can always catch it on your YouTube channel, I believe, after the fact, as well as on our Spotify playlists to just listen to it. It's Travelers Proc. Mike, congratulations on the 3-0. Congratulations making it to playoffs. Thanks for your time, man. We'll throw it back to the desk.
Another big congrats to the Jade Dragons for making it to the playoffs, guaranteeing themselves that 3rd seed spot and being able to have that opportunity to play in the playoffs, where we'll qualify again. Only 4 of the 6 teams that go to playoffs are going to be going to Worlds, so 2 teams going to have to wait just a little bit longer if they don't end up making it to Worlds in that last chance qualifier, along with now the 2 teams that didn't make it there. But for the remainder of our day, we are done with our first set, Jade Dragons and Eldritch Hounds, a 3-0 to the Dragons. Now we move into the final set, not just of our weekend, Charlie, but of the regular phase here in the Road to Worlds. Oni Warriors and Gilded Gladiators, the final matchup that we will see before that playoffs in just a couple of weeks. We'll see, can the Gilded Gladiators find that first phase win for themselves today? Will the Oni Warriors continue to dominate across their division? As you can see for the Order side, that is our final guaranteed lock-in seeding. It's the same over on Chaos division right now. It's mostly just seeing if the Warriors can bump up to 8-2, if the Gilded Gladiators can find a win over there and jump themselves to 1-9 to be determined in the set coming after. So your playoff teams will be in seeding order for each one. Ferrymen, Leviathans, Dragons on the Chaos side, Warriors, Ravens, Kings. Bottom 2 there for the Eldritch Hounds and the Gladiators. As we mentioned, we'll have to wait until that last chance qualifier in January, where they'll play against the 2 teams that don't make it from playoffs, and then the 4 SCC/SOC teams that qualify later on, and that'll all take place in December in just about a month or so.
I'm saying if the Gilded Gladiators 3-0, we should just give them first seed, you know?
just here you go. Hey, man, you won. Just take first seed. Now the Warriors got to wait until next time.
This is their last chance to get a dub. If the Gilded Gladiators want a 1 in that column, this is their last chance to do it, and they're against their top seed in their division, so could not be more difficult, honestly.
Yeah, Gladiators, if they want to find a win, they got to pull out all the stops. It's going to be the Gilded Gladiators and Oni Warriors in their final match of the regular phase coming up right after this break.
Thank you.